All right, I would like to go ahead and call to order the Romeo Downtown Development Authority informational meeting for Monday, June 5th, 2023 at 7 p.m. This is a state mandated Romeo DDA informational meeting only. Elizabeth, will you do a roll call, please?
Sure. Tar?
Here.
St. Laurent?
Here.
Lee?
Here.
Hutnick?
Here.
Rose?
Here.
Hayes?
Here.
McLeod?
Here.
Poznanski?
Here.
All right, we have a quorum. Next, I'd like to ask for an approval of the agenda as presented.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
I have a motion by Lee. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Rose. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. So next up, we'll go up to number 3, informational items. This is a review of the downtown management report. Elizabeth, you want to
Sure.
jump in with that?
Sure. So this was not something that we had scheduled, but by looking at the calendar, this is something we have to do twice a year. And in light of Madison moving on last week, she said, let's get this report done. This is the third one we've done in this style that you've seen. The other 2 are also on our Facebook, and it's also in your shared drive. This is a template that came from the Michigan Downtown Association to aid downtown development authorities to make it easier for reporting and also good visuals and whatnot. And the content inside is all of ours, so every municipality or every DDA does it a little bit different. So by the numbers, Andrea did send me a couple questions, and so where it says by the numbers, those numbers come straight off of Google, and I've got copies of that if anybody would want that. So the interactions with Google, the site visits from Google searches, direction requests, the businesses, of course, that's from our own businesses that we know that have opened since January. The public donations that is there that you can see that we went over last month. Facebook and Instagram shows you in the last 28 days, reaches since January. The next pages, you can see the reach of our Facebook page and then also our Instagram. I believe right around 20 months ago, it's grown significantly, so we're happy about that. Events and partnered events that we've had, Winterfest, the 5K, Winterfest, Springfest, sidewalk sales, and the garage sale weekend that's in partnership with the Parks and Rec, and then the summer concert series that's coming up, and then just showing our open house and ribbon cutting ceremony. And then we pulled a few things from some of the budget workshops and from the budget themselves, and conversations as far as future projects and goals. I know that there's been discussion about wanting to award more business facade grants, working with building owners to fill empty properties. The alley project renovation has come up on several occasions. I know Andrea had mentioned getting the PA system up and running again. Those are things that are talked about. So within PA 157 requirements, it says reviewing upcoming project. It doesn't mean you have to fulfill the ones that are in this report, but they want to know what there's some things that you might be working on in the future. So that is what we have right there. Are there any questions?
Do you know who were the 3 new businesses? Do we know the names of those establishments?
We have there's a doctor's office that opened up over in the same building where Mark Faria is. The 5 Degrees North. And the third one, I believe, was another office. I'm not sure which one. I can't remember. I don't have it off the top of my head.
Sure. Thank you.
There's also, I'm sorry, my voice is going to be very in and out tonight. At 143 West St. Clair, we now have counselors in the office. So that's another business.
That's probably the other one right there, yeah.
Yeah, and just for reference here, this information is more for the public than it is for us as board members. So thank you guys for attending, because this information is for you and the people watching on Mitt TV.
And the
And I think I'm sorry.
sorry, go ahead, Elizabeth.
I think these requirements, Zach, if I remember correctly, it's on the second page of the first set that I gave you there. I believe this was changed in 2019. Doesn't it say 2019 at the bottom of that one? The requirements for twice a year. I believe
Yeah,
started in
the
2019.
Act 57 of 2019. Yep. Yeah, 2 times a year, I think. The last couple of years, we were pushing them in like November and December, so it's good to get one
Yeah,
out of
last
the
year was
way.
July and December. The year
Okay.
before that, it was October and December.
There we go. All right, so.
By the
yep.
numbers, just to clarify, the business profile interactions on Google, site visits, and direction requests are from January through May?
They're actually, I got clarity from that, from Madison. It actually is December to May because
Okay.
that's how they do it on Google.
Okay.
So like the ones that I actually printed today, if anybody wanted to see them, shows January to June. So the numbers aren't quite the same, but that's just the way those
Right,
reports
right.
run.
Okay, thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions? All right, next up, we have board member comments. Does anybody have any comments?
I don't,
Public comment? Go ahead. Do you want to come to the podium?
I don't need to. It's just one of the new businesses, Kind Beauty Salon.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yes. That was in the fall, I believe. They opened up in the fall.
I didn't realize this was.
Yeah, no, yeah, so this is,
I thought it was like for the last year.
no, that's okay. No, just the last 6 months.
All right, if there's no other public comment at this time, I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion. I'll
Uh,
second.
Motion by St. Laurent, second by Lee. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the meeting is adjourned. Moving on, we will call to order the.
Can you give me just
Oh,
1
yeah,
second to
sorry.
switch folders? That's okay.
Let me know when you're ready.
All right, well. Lots of folders tonight. Okay, I'm ready.
Okay, I would like to call to order the Romeo Downtown Development Authority regular meeting for Monday, June 5th, 2023 at 7:08 PM. Elizabeth, can you do a roll call again?
Yes, Hutnick? Here. McLeod?
Here.
Rose?
Here.
Hayes?
Here.
Poznanski?
Here.
Lee?
Here.
St. Laurent?
Here.
Tar?
All right, we have a quorum. Next, if you'll all join me in reciting the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, next, we need an approval of the agenda as presented. Do I have a motion? Actually, I am going to ask that we remove under new business, line item F. That was more of a, yeah, just in case we were going to have information to present, but I don't have information to present at this time. So I'm gonna ask that we remove that, line item F under new business and approve the agenda as amended. Any other changes?
I'll make a motion to approve as amended.
All right, I have a motion by Lee. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by St. Laurent. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Next up, we need an approval of the minutes. We'll start out with the May 8th, 2023 regular meeting minutes. Do we have a motion to approve?
I'll make that motion to approve the May 8th minutes.
Motion by Rose. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Lee. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Next up, we have, and we need an approval for the May 17th, 2023 special meeting minutes. Are we, Megan, how does that work? Do we need to approve the minutes from inside that meeting as well? Do you-
That's how council does it, but I don't recall being directed that way.
Okay. Do you have
Those minutes.
just filed?
There was direction
Right,
given.
okay. Do I have? I probably
Okay. That's okay. I think we can just approve.
Yeah, there was direction given and told what to
Okay.
do with them.
Yeah, those have been filed.
Okay. All right, so do we have a motion to approve the minutes from the May 17th, 2023 special meeting?
I'll make a motion to approve them.
Motion by Lee, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by McLeod, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have public forum. Anybody that would like to speak? No, we will move on then. Elizabeth, financial report, you're up.
So the financial statements are year-to-date from July 1 to May 30. The month was closed prior to the end of the month due to the timing of the board meeting. All transactions are included with the exception of interest income for the month of May. Revenue collected includes $45,375.37 related to the Washington Township TIF distribution, $500 in donations, and $202.69 in interest income. Getting that money from Washington Township took a few phone calls, so we finally got it, so that was good. That is to finish out the, when you look at the budget for the income, it closes out what was the expected income, so. Total bills presented today are $17,175.42. And you see the work that the bookkeeper Rebecca did there, statements and by Plant Moran, budget to actual statement, activity, transaction list. Copy of the bank statements also included, and the credit card statements as have been previously requested. And I do have all of the checks if anybody wants to review those as requested. And the statement, like we said, is towards the end there. Does anybody have any questions?
I have a couple.
Sure.
Berg's Enterprises,
Carpet cleaning?
Yes.
Is that what it is?
It was the upholstery cleaning, yes, for
Okay.
all the chairs in the offices.
Harbor House Publishers,
That was the chamber directory?
Yes.
and then Lisa Spagnola.
She's one of our volunteers, and that was for craft events, craft items for Springfest.
Okay, and then just a couple more. Mauricio Jackson,
Hit window cleaning.
Mary Hellman, I'm assuming expenses.
Yes, those
Okay.
were, that was reimbursements, and all of those expenses were actually under budget for the donated amount from People Driven Credit Union for the open house, and then also there was a donation from Rolling Stream Water as well.
All right.
That covered those expenses.
Tom Moore,
Say again?
Tom Moore.
Was he the musician?
I believe that's correct. I have the checks here. If you'd like to look at that, we can take the time to do that now, or I can show you after the meeting.
I just
Okay,
curious.
yeah, I
what it
don't
was.
know off the top of my head what that one was for,
Okay,
but
so we
that
can
sounds
check
like
that
that's
one.
right.
And then Vans Valley Watering, is that,
That is the contract that Sean McManus
Oh,
has for the
Sean, okay.
watering, and yes, he does it under the LLC, Vans Watering LLC.
got it, okay, perfect, thank you.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve payment of bills through May 30th, 2023 in the amount of $17,175.42?
I'll make a motion to, sorry,
Motion by Tar, second by
I'll second.
Lee. Elizabeth, can you do a roll call, please?
Sure. Lee?
Yes.
Tar?
Yes.
Poznanski?
Yes.
Rose?
Yes.
Hayes?
Yes?
St. Laurent?
Yes,
McLeod?
Yes.
Hutnick?
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Next up, Elizabeth with the DDA Executive Director's Report.
Sure. The community collaboration, the Romeo TNT bi-monthly meetings at the DDA offices continue. This month, they held their annual orientation and review of their policies and procedures as an organization. We are members and partners in the community as well as People Driven Credit Union. Per the board direction, Extra Credit Union's little library is now being handled by a village president. Extra Credit Union is in agreement that the new location in the southwest parking lot location previously discussed. We will continue to facilitate and lend aid as requested. That was communicated today as well. So I just need to wait for communication as to how you all want that handled. This was included in last month's report, but there is a need for a larger conversation about the central business district businesses and employee parking. In addition, we should consider seeking input from the village in regards to parking enforcement, more time limits, signage, et cetera. And we have not received any type of communication from the village on this since the last board meeting. So just making you all aware of that that was in the board packet last month. Website collaboration continues with our contracted provider, Verona Creative. It's well underway. Board action is needed to continue further development in the new fiscal years. One of the items that I put in front of you, you'll see that it looks like this. It says Verona. You see there her logo on the bottom. And she speaks specifically about some of the things that are needed. And you all in your approval back, I believe it was March, only approved it through June 30, so that's just a few weeks away. So I'm not sure how you all want to handle that, but that is going to need board action in order to continue any type of assistance with that. The DDA new office space, our open house on May 16th was well attended, and it was a wonderful way to celebrate our downtown and area businesses, along with a multitude of our volunteers who came together to create a beautiful space that can be used in a myriad of ways. It was a great turnout. It was great for all of those who could make it. It was nice to see you there. And Betty, one of the people in our audience, helped. She was one of the people who helped everything run quite smoothly that night. So thank you so much for doing that, Betty. Wi-Fi is still set to be installed in the upcoming weeks. We are still waiting. The internet's been connected in the building, but not connected, and so they're still waiting. That's all on people-driven at this point. So the hotspot that is checked out in my personal name is what continues to be used in that space. So we thank you, the Romeo District Library, thank them very much for that. The 2023 floral contracts under downtown beautification, all of the containers and flats were delivered by Jessica's on Wednesday, the 25th. If any of you saw any of our social media posts, it was not a fun morning because at 7:30 we found out that it was supposed to be a freeze warning that night, and we were very grateful. Paul Bowers, who owns the Old Locks Cleaners buildings, after several 20 minutes of trying to come up with a solution, I said, hold on, let me call you all back. And then I called him and he said, yes, you can use the building. So that worked out well. The flowers were planted and hung Saturday morning by Sean and his crew. The payment schedules have begun. They're documented appropriately, and the third payment to Jesco's will not go out until the fall mums are delivered in September. The maintenance contract is on track for payment scheduling on a monthly basis until the contract ends in October. Winter holiday greens and lighting. Jesco's greenhouse is, I know most of you, a good majority of you are new to the board, or half of you are, I guess, at this point. There was discussion when the current contract was awarded in the fall that Jesco's was interested in doing the round. Everyone knows what the planters look like, right, downtown? So they are interested in putting Christmas greenery or winter greenery, basically, in those liners, so they could just be swapped out again if you all wanted to look to save some money. Avoiding the roping, it continues to get much more expensive. It doesn't last as long as those containers. So that's something that could be swapped out. I talked with the lighting people that work with Jesco's today. He was trying to come up with something today, but wasn't able to get it to me in time. If you all are interested in going that direction, there's a conversation to be had. I also spoke with Lisa Jaroche, and so, they are still interested, but he might be shadowing someone else, going forward. As far as it's not something he wants to continue to hang, but he might allow one of his electricians to shadow that. But that would be separate from the greens, of course. But that is something that's going to be need to be done fairly quickly. But direction is going to be needed from this board to decide how you all want to go about doing that.
And is that information in here somewhere, what you're reading from?
It is not. Well, I'm reading from the greens from my director's report. Yes,
Oh, okay.
I am reading
I see.
from. But as far as what direction, it doesn't make sense to put an RFP out if you all haven't decided what design you want to go with, because those are a lot of work to put those out. And I just don't know, last year's contract was $21,000. I don't know what you want to do this year. There were less expensive options there, but it just really depends on what this board decides to do.
I guess, your question. Sorry, your question, Deborah, is it on our agenda? Is that topic on the agenda to be discussed?
No, it's not.
It is not.
Because you're
No.
saying we
Okay,
need
just
to,
information.
okay, that's, yeah, I
Yes,
think that's
thank
what you were asking.
Yeah.
And when Elizabeth says the board has to decide how it wants to move forward with that, we have to decide how we're going to write that RFP to present and put out there, so the people are bidding on the correct scope of work.
Okay.
Right, which means we need to get it on an agenda then.
But you all have new pillars that you've formed, and the beautification pillar has been involved in items that I'm not aware of. So unless there's direction from the pillars to the board, we don't know how you all want, I don't know how you all want to proceed.
Right, so it should still get on, I would put it on the next agenda.
Yeah.
So will there be work with the beautification pillar then, as far as?
Well, if we don't give ourselves goals to aim towards, it's just not going to get done. So I think putting it on there and putting it in the business to be addressed would be a thing
Got
to
it.
do.
Okay. The MDA conference was held in Alpena on Thursday evening. We did a walking tour. It was, Alpena's, I have never been up there before, but they've had a lot of changes. They did their first ever flower festival. It was amazing, absolutely beautiful. If you get a chance, you should go online and take a look at that. I have given you all several items from the conference. One of the other spaces that was there was Nagani. There's a whole big 8.5 by 11 brochure, or actually magazine, that was delivered. It was pretty incredible to see what a few of these DDAs have done to work with their municipalities and just to see the collaboration they have, and it was very helpful. And also you see the different workshop topics, so if you have any other questions about that, I'll be happy to answer them outside of tonight. And last but not least, it's with sadness that I report that Madison has resigned. Her energy, enthusiasm, and inventive spirit was a huge asset to the DDA and the whole Romeo community. Her initiatives brought great success to the DDA and the downtown businesses. I wish her well in her future endeavors, and her resignation is attached. Her report is also attached from the events report, so if there's any questions from that, I will answer them as I can.
I do have 2 points of clarification, if I could ask.
Sure.
Again, I apologize for my voice tonight. With the little library and saying it's being handled by the village president, I guess I need some clarification on that. At the last meeting, this board asked me to go to the village council and ask for permission to place that library, of which the council gave permission to place it in the secondary location. And that was as far as my understanding was and my involvement in that. I then replied back to the chair and our executive director as to that decision. So does this board want me to handle this? I've not been asked to handle it, so I'm just looking for clarification.
Sure. So the last we heard on that email, after you gave the approval, that council approved it, we were waiting to hear back from Extra Credit Union to make sure that that was an acceptable solution, which I think we just heard back today that they were okay with that, correct?
Yeah, last week. But
well,
yeah, I
I
emailed
just-
you that, yes, correct,
Okay,
yeah.
so we just found out about it today. But, yeah, I agree with Megan. I don't think it's a village. I don't think it's on the village to handle that. I don't know if we have to coordinate with DPW to plant it, or if anybody can plant it, but I
Well,
mean.
no, now that this board has permission, I go out, got to call Miss Dig to where it's going to be done, and that corner is what's been approved.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
And I'm happy to join in. I just wasn't of the understanding that I was taking that project on.
I guess I was referring to the email that you sent to Zach and I that said that you wanted whatever person was on the pillar subcommittee to have them contact you. So that's where I got the reference that
Okay.
you were handling it because you were asking for a board member to contact you about that. So
Okay.
my apologies if I misunderstood the email.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I wanted to walk out there and look at, talk with the pillars of where they want it to specifically go. But other than that, it's up to the DDA to place it there. You have permission from the board.
So somebody just needs to go out there and figure out exactly, now that we know the general area, an exact location has to be,
Right.
Figured
Because the
out.
board didn't want it in, because that's a corner and it needs to not be in a sight line. It needs to be, there
sure
was
you're
a
not blocking
concern that
traffic.
it was at reachable level because of the height of, the flower bed there.
Sure.
And the how big it is, and so, make sure wherever we're putting it, we cut it down so it's literally at, reachable level, and it's not like standing up into the flower bed to reach.
So I think it would just take one person from this board to set up a meeting with Megan, go out there,
Right.
finalize the spot.
And that's what I was asking, is if it could be passed on to the pillars, and whoever that pillar committee is for that type of thing could reach back out to me, and we could do it, but,
Does it kind of seem like it's a design one? I mean, I would
Yeah.
be willing to adopt that.
okay,
All right,
okay,
perfect.
so just get with me.
So if there's anything that the DDA office needs to execute, I would imagine that I would need to be on site for that, if you expect me to execute the steps of that, or there's going to be some things lost in translation. So however that gets figured out, I would just ask to be included in it, or it just gets passed off to someone entirely to do that.
And that little library is located, it's currently at the DDA office, is where?
No,
being
it's
stored?
at Ron White's facility at his yard.
Okay.
Well, I'm sure if you get Deborah that information, or, let me not assume, do you want to take it all on yourself?
Well, I'll probably I'll go with whoever it is, figure it out, and then from there, I mean, I have no idea how to execute on it, but I'm sure I can
Okay.
talk to some people and figure out who executed on it the first time.
I don't know.
Do you
I
know?
did. Mhm.
You worked with a contractor that dug a hole for you and all that?
No,
kind of stuff?
the person who built it and brought it out from Extra Credit Union is the one that installed it.
Okay.
And Miss Dig was contacted and all that as appropriately.
Sure,
So after we meet, then I guess you can get with Elizabeth
yeah,
and decide however.
okay.
Okay. My other area of clarification is with the parking. You continue to speak that there's been no communication from the village, but I don't know, maybe if I missed an email or something, or an update from this board on the parking lot subcommittee, but I've yet to receive a request or some sort of information that I'm looking into, or a question to answer.
No.
So to say there's no communication, I'm a little, again, would like some clarification on
We
that.
haven't submitted anything to you.
Okay, just want to make sure. Thank you.
Do we have a parking lot committee?
Well, it's like.
Or does it fall under the design pillar?
We did at one point. We have a
Okay.
parking lot subcommittee, and that's basically where, John, were you on that subcommittee with
Yes.
me? Greg?
Yeah.
Carl may have been as well. And that's when we did get new signs for the Main Street parking. We did place time limits in a few specific spots. I think it was 2-hour parking, if I'm not mistaken.
Those are the only ones that were installed. The 20 minutes never went up because there was concern, so those did not go up.
Okay, so.
Those are still at DPW.
But to my knowledge, there hasn't been any conversation since then about any new parking enforcement. We kind of,
Well, does
thought we
that-
kind of exhausted that conversation, and. it
There's a lot of
basically-
communication from businesses that are just like, when is there, just that type of, like, we need this parking situation is just, for instance, the person doesn't work there anymore, but the business next door to People Driven Credit Union, drove a big 4-door truck with a boat sticking out the back of it, which blocked, there's just, and unless there's enforcement from the village, we can't make a move.
So maybe we can
so-
ask the design committee to make that a point of action to look into?
So part of it we do have on our agenda is figuring out how to consolidate and have a more fair way to divvy up the parking. So that's part of the problem. But then the enforcement of it, I think that is probably a
Yeah.
village council meeting, not us, right?
Right, I would think so. But I mean, at
Okay.
least if we can have something to bring to them and say, here's
Yeah.
our, yeah, I agree.
Thank you. I just didn't know if I was missing something that I wasn't communicating with this board regarding that.
All right,
I have a question, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
About the website. Did we, and I don't recall in our meeting when we approved Verona, but were we going to ask for more quotes, or were they supposed to give us a quote for the remainder of the year? What was the plan?
There's actually a pillar report on that tonight, right? Andrea?
Well, we're gonna talk about marketing, and that could be part of it, but I think to what you're speaking to, what was our plan when we only went through June?
I'm trying to go back and recall, because we didn't leave it open-ended. It was something along the lines of, we need to define what,
I think it had to do with the budget.
that's what I was gonna say.
the timing of budget,
and
yeah.
how we were going to budget this moving forward for a monthly contract with, whether it be Verona or anybody else who's bidding on the scope of work.
So
But
can-
nothing has transpired since then as far as formulating an RFP for that work that's ending this month.
Right.
So,
So I have, which I don't want to jump ahead too much, but we can talk a little bit about under the promotion pillar because I have some insight on Verona in general, so I don't know if you want to
Okay.
put it there and.
Okay, cool.
okay. So are you all set then with your report, Elizabeth?
I am, unless anybody has any questions. As far as the events report, there's a sheet included in there. I know last month there was questions regarding what might happen with vendors for Vintage Fest and so forth, and, you know, based on some of, I mean, we can talk about
Really
that
quick,
once
is
we
that-
get down to
I was gonna
unfinished
say, is
business.
that- okay,
That's
that's
fine,
a-
yeah.
okay.
But just so you know that it's there.
Okay. So moving on, funding requests, we have none. We'll move to line item 9, committee reports. Employment Subcommittee. Don't
We
believe there's
haven't
anything,
met,
no
nope.
meeting.
No.
So moving on, we have the 4 Pillars Subcommittees report.
So I have some updates for the promotions committee. We have not formally met, but I've done a little bit of legwork on getting some things rolling. So we do have a meeting this week with Verona to just start the discussion of what that marketing program would look like and what would it encompass. And I think it makes sense for whatever marketing company we go with, that they would also take on the website part of it. So that's the kind of the first start with that. Another thing that just kind of happened in the last couple of weeks, which is pretty neat, is I was thinking about the concert in the park series, and it was thinking like, gosh, how can we make this last longer? And so I thought about possibly doing something into the fall with a Shakespeare in the park, and I called Lou at All the World's a Stage. And he took it and ran with it and turned it into the Shakespeare Experience in Romeo. He wants to bring in the Stratford players from Stratford, Ontario to come down. He wants to have different workshops, make it a true kind of immersion. There's a performer named Devin Glover. He's known as the Sonnet Man. He's been on Today's Show. He's been all over the world traveling. And he does kind of like a Hamilton thing where he's a rapper that does Shakespeare. So in talking with Lou at All the World's a Stage, he feels that we probably can't pull it off for this fall, but let's start working on it for next fall. And he's got just a ton of resources, and so I just wanted to bring that to the board too. It's something that just kind of came to be. So if the board is okay with us continuing to look at doing that event, I'd like to meet with Lou and get more information and bring it back to the board of what we would be looking at, what he's able to bring to the table, and kind of maybe planning something for springtime of next year.
Yeah, which would be good because then, you know, and even if it's not feasible cost-wise for the spring, you can budget for it and do it in the fall.
Yes.
Because you'll know what it's gonna cost at
Yeah,
that point.
I mean, he's a really cool guy, and he was, you know, he kind of took it and ran with it, and he's like, and we can have merchandise to sell, and I mean, he just really made it into a really fun event. And he just started kind of rolling with it with different people to bring in and different performers and ways to bring it, so it's from kids to adults. So if the board's okay with that, I'd like to just continue those conversations with him and bring
Sure.
the results of that back.
And Andrea, maybe we can bring back the postcards that we did from
Yes.
Romeo to Juliet, Georgia.
Yeah.
Oh, great idea.
If anyone
yeah.
remembers that, we used to have it Valentine's Day. You could bring your postcards to Romeo and they'd stamp them here. And then they would send them to Juliet, Georgia, and they would stamp them there. So you get a Romeo and Juliet stamp on any Valentines you sent out.
I didn't know they stopped that. I thought it was just a yearly thing.
Well, I don't know if they will still do it if you ask them, but it's not something that we're
It'd be something you could promote.
Yeah, let's get the word out there kind of thing. So, and that's an easy, fun thing, because when I had my business downtown, I would get people that would come in and they'd say, I had to drop off my Valentines, and they'd come in and get something to eat. So it was a nice pull from people from outside the area, because you had to physically bring your cards to the post office. So
Yeah.
it forced people from Clinton Township, Warren, if you want these stamps, you're driving to Romeo and you're gonna do it.
Yeah, cool.
Just to be clear, the meeting you're going to conduct with Verona, it's more to get an idea of the scope of work to form an RFP?
Correct.
Okay.
And then we'll form an RFP and we'll go out for bid on it. But just to kind of start that conversation of what are we looking at for a marketing program, get some feedback, and then obviously bring it back to the board and go from there.
Is she willing to go a month to month at this point, does anybody know, and what does that cost?
Until we get through with an
Until we-
RFP and
yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
I can, I'm meeting with her actually tomorrow, so I can ask her if we're able to do month to month and bring it,
You want to just have her confirm that with Elizabeth too, just to?
yeah?
keep
You want me to
everybody
have
in
her
the
reach
loop?
out to you then? Was that the best route to go?
So when is this meeting that you're having with her?
It should be tomorrow. We have to
Okay, so
confirm.
is that, am I involved in that, or are you doing that independently?
It was just a pillar meeting, so we're just meeting to go over a couple things.
Okay, so the whole pillar subcommittee is meeting, is your meeting, as a subcommittee, you're meeting with her? The three of you
Yeah,
are?
Yeah, well, no,
Gotcha.
Zach wasn't able to come, and
Okay.
we're still trying to work out details, but yeah, the pillar is meeting, so whoever is there and able to go.
Gotcha, okay, so I'm sorry, so,
Just more of an update on the website maintenance to see if
Got
it's
it.
possible to just continue with a
Month
month
to
to
month.
month.
is this a
Since
phone
it's
call
the-
then? Are you
I
having a
can
phone
call
call
and
with
ask
her?
And then what it would be for a month to month, if is that the
Yeah,
question?
I think it was more so Danielle was saying, since you're meeting with her anyway,
Yeah.
could you just ask the question?
Yeah, I have an appointment with her tomorrow already
both
for
do?
something different,
Okay.
so I guess
Yeah, Elizabeth, if you can just ask her,
Sure.
can we do a month to month, because by the time we have a next meeting, we're not gonna have web services anymore.
Sure.
So yeah, then if you're already meeting with her, then go ahead and ask the
Okay,
question.
sounds good. So just, Danielle, to back up
Yeah,
just for a second,
yeah.
the minutes from the March 6th meeting, she had presented the marketing proposal. It was an amount not to exceed 1,200 for the fiscal
Right.
year 22-23, and we've only spent 300 of that.
Oh,
So
okay.
we're
So if she'll
within
give
this
us a monthly
calendar. Mm-hmm.
price, we shouldn't have a problem.
Okay,
Just making
great.
it happen.
Right.
Great.
So, perfect. The other item that we kind of threw out there is, I talked to a couple different people, and actually I talked to Megan today, and she told me that it's something that was discussed before, but potentially doing some igloos in the park to allow for kind of year-round use, and so that's something else that we're looking into as far as to bring people and give them somewhere to kind of quasi-hang out downtown.
I think that's a great idea.
I want to say that was discussed right after 2020,
Yeah, it was when
21.
it was when they were really popular,
Yeah.
when every
Mhm.
restaurant
And
had
people
a
couldn't get
igloo
out. Because of
Because you couldn't go
Yeah.
in a restaurant. you
Yeah,
had-
so we were talking about carry out and then giving them a spot in the park that they could go then and sit and eat
They-
safely.
They have one set up at, I mean, they took it down now that it's summer. They had one set up this winter at Partridge Creek for a restaurant that's there now. They took the place of, oh shoot, I won't be able to think of the name of the restaurants, but anyway, they had those out there and they were very popular. You had to be on a waiting list to get in there.
Yeah.
In the
they-
wintertime.
And that's kind of what I thought.
I thought it
It's
was very
just a
cool.
place to go,
Yeah.
not that, so people can just go in there. I have a message into Friends of the Village Park to see if they are interested in potentially funding or being a part of that. So, again, once we have more information, I'll bring it back, but that's what we've done so far.
Great, thank you. Any other pillar reports?
I have one for the design committee. Greg, I had sent you an email asking you if you had an update on the survey that you had been looking
I had
into.
sent the quotes in, he called me a little while back and wanted to know if there's any movement. I told him right now there was probably not the time that the board would be looking at it. There's some significant internal changes that are happening and things going on, but other than the quotes, it'll be up to,
So it's just kind of on hold for now, nothing new?
yeah, until somebody wants to, make a commitment to them and get someone out. There's two of them, and they're fairly similar in price.
Mhm. Okay. And I had been getting the information pulled out for the initial draft plan for the alley closure, the Buscemi/Marketplace, whatever. And
You're talking about a potential
yeah,
permanent
mhm.
solution to that.
Yep, so the concept for that was approved in the budget, and I just wanted to understand, like, how do I request these funds so that I can get this guy started on renderings and the
Well,
things
it
that
would
he
have to go
needs
out
to
for,
do?
it would have to go out for bid. We can't just pick a contractor and move forward with that. It would have to go out for bid, they'd have to bid on it. Those bids would have to be brought to the board. The board, based on the, you know, he could be 20,000, another guy could be 10. You don't have to go with the cheapest.
Well, this guy doesn't do the work. He was gonna prepare a bid package for us to figure out what would be the scope of what would need to be done so that we could have a formal bid package to send out to vendors, and then he would help us.
But you're saying that comes at a cost?
Analyze them, yes.
What's the
mhm.
So-
So this first part has to go out?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, well, it depends on the amount.
What's the cost?
It's 13,200.
Yeah, that would have to go
What
out
is
for
it,
bid.
over 10, or?
It's less than that, I mean,
It's
it's.
1,500. I
Seven-
believe it's 15. I'd have to look at the
Yeah,
purchase.
that's per
Over
our-
1,500, is
Yeah,
that what
that's
you said?
per our purchasing policy.
Okay.
So basically, you're going, knowing what he's going to do, same thing with Andrea and getting her meeting with Verona. Now you're formulating an RFP. I know in the past, we haven't brought, the board hasn't necessarily had to approve the RFP by a vote. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. But it just has to be something that can go out. I know I, as the chair, I think approved RFPs in the past so that we could save time by not bringing it to the board and voting on it formally, but the board would have to vote on the bids that were received to move forward with any sort of funding from this board to that contractor. Does
Okay,
that make
so I
sense?
lost a little bit in the translation there. So the first part is what?
RFP. You're gonna
And what
vote-
doesn't have to be voted on?
The content of the RFP.
Oh, okay, and
So
then
what you're
once you
bidding on.
receive the quotes, then that gets voted on?
Correct.
That makes sense, okay.
Correct. And those need to be sealed bids, that are opened. Usually in the RFP, it'll state where you're going to open it, at what time, and, they have the ability to attend the, bids being open. But at that point, they come to the board at the next regular meeting.
And so
for
where
approval.
is all that instruction, so that I can review all of that and get my arms around that?
I mean,
Is it a
it's not really.
process document or
Well,
something?
I mean, if you ask Elizabeth to share maybe the watering bid that went out or the flower bid, that'll give you an idea of a jumping off point as far as the information that is or isn't included.
Or
in
I'm
there.
sure our village clerk, she does RFPs often and does this sort of process. If you wanted to request some of her time,
Sure.
I'm sure she would go over it with you.
Did
So-
you say the,
Clerk?
okay.
So are you handling this as the design subcommittee pillar, the creation of this RFP? Is that how you all are handling this? or
Yeah, mhm.
As a subcommittee you are? Okay. So that has 4 of you on that right now, correct? Deborah, John, Greg, Zach?
Yeah, correct.
Okay, gotcha. So moving forward, as a suggestion for you all, if you all have reports to give, it would be helpful if there's like written reports that are submitted to be included in the board packet. That way you have them for posterity. Otherwise, there's just, notes, and the way that minutes are done by state law, you don't include a lot of conversations. It's just board action. So that's just a suggestion. That way you'll get your information included.
And that way other board members too, when we go back, we can either review ahead of time of what's being discussed if we have questions, or we can follow up after the fact and we kind of know what's being discussed, because, every board member is involved in 2 of the 4 subcommittees, so there's going to be things taking place in 2 other meetings that you're not aware of, so this just helps keep everybody up to speed.
Okay.
Anybody else with a subcommittee report?
I will mention not a report necessarily, but to clarify a couple of things regarding these pillar subcommittees. We discussed this last meeting. These are open meetings. Anybody's welcome and invited to join these. We need to publish the meeting dates. Otherwise, we
and
can't.
post.
And post, otherwise we can't join them. I mean, I've heard a couple times Elizabeth asking, may I join this? Of course you may join, you may join every one
Anyone
of them.
can join them,
But
yeah.
of course, you need to know when they are in order to join them, so, let's make sure we have the lead of each pillar, just as was requested regarding reports and minutes, posting these as well.
Megan,
I think that's for everybody's benefit.
Megan, do your subcommittees for the village board, are those open meetings when they meet?
That's a great question, Zach. They are, yes. Anyone can come to a subcommittee meeting. Upon taking office, I have asked that all of our subcommittees do post them and that we do take some form of minutes of goings-on.
Great,
We
thank
do,
you.
it is just best practices, I wouldn't say proper procedure, but best practices to follow the rules of which all of our boards follow. It just lends itself towards clarity and transparency.
Great, thank you. All right, if there's nothing else to report, we'll move on to unfinished business. Line item A, downtown events. Elizabeth, was that?
Sure. So just the sidewalk sale and garage sale weekend, this is the second year that we've I don't want to say, sponsored the event in partnership with Parks and Rec. This year, they took on doing a digital map, so an interactive map, like much like what we did with the Screech Fest, as far as homes being decorated around the Halloween time. And so we aren't taking over anything at all for Parks and Rec, but we both have an event on Facebook and also on our websites that we are co-hosting, that whole words that Facebook likes to use, the whole co-hosting thing. And so it's getting all over the place. I saw just this afternoon that the Macomb Events has shared it, some other Detroit area, so it's getting quite a bit of attention. And then any businesses that want to downtown can put stuff out front. We don't have a list of businesses that are participating, just a lot of people have said they'll do it at the last minute if they feel like it. I know that there's going to be a market over MJC Marketplace and Red House Vintage, which is the building connected to them. They're doing stuff outside. I know Old World Nouveau is doing things. In Kind Beauty's planning on having items out. Zach, you've talked about having items out. I believe Rolling Stream might do have something out there. I'm not sure what exactly, but even if it's a booth and whatnot. So it's just getting people up and down downtown, up and around. Hopefully, when people are coming and going out garage selling, they'll think to come and eat downtown.
Yeah, and just to kind of mention, this is the first year we've combined garage sales at the same time as sidewalk sales.
No, second year. This is our second year. We did it last year at the same time. I have the brochure. I have the poster at the office if you'd like to see it.
Well, because at the event meeting in the fall, we talked about changing it to this weekend.
I think it was staying, well, I guess I pull it up. I'm sure I have it here somewhere, but you could be right.
Okay. That's okay. So, I mean, we're just more pointing out the fact that, this will hopefully gain traction. We're capitalizing on traffic that's already coming to town for the garage sales. So, yeah, hopefully everybody comes out. It starts Thursday, correct? And goes through Sunday?
Thursday through Sunday, yeah.
Vintage Fest, board direction and clarity needed? Oh, I'm sorry.
A quick question, because I have been asked, so I'll make sure this is clear. Probably a question more towards the village. I don't know, Megan, if you can help with this. Participating businesses, we're talking about people going out front of their businesses. Are we in need of permit? I know in the past we have, and if they do, I just want to make sure they've got time.
Thanks for putting me on the spot there, John. I would say it's in front of your own business.
Okay.
You're not rolling up a food truck in front of your business. You're not doing those sorts of things. Generally, there is a vendor permit for selling wares, but it's you on your own sidewalk. You're not impeding foot traffic of village-owned sidewalk. If you were going to have a different vendor come in front of your business, that might be a different conversation. I am not the permitter, that is the village clerk. So if you have somebody outside of your business coming to be in front, I would address that with the clerk.
Anything else on?
So any businesses out there that maybe had thought or are planning on doing that, there's your answer. Make sure you get the village and you don't get backed up in the middle of the day. Thanks.
Okay, Vintage Fest, board direction and clarity needed.
Yes, so with the parting of Madison from the Romeo DDA, it's not just on that, back from, I'm not quite sure what you all want to do. I know once you all started the promotions pillar, I have communication from a few of the board members about, wanting the volunteers to come forward with a plan, and so that hasn't happened. We had an events planning calendar with our focus groups where there were different milestones to accomplish at certain timeframes during the month. There were different, in those focus groups, there was a marketing focus group, there was a restaurant and retail focus group, and some of those businesses and board members have just fallen off, and we've had no communication as far as what was being done with that, because like, for example, the restaurant and retail focus group was to be working specifically on which restaurants were going to participate in having outside food and which retailers were okay, vendors, all of that sort of thing. All of those things haven't happened. And so
My understanding was that Madison was working on pulling Vintage Fest together, so was
Correct.
she not having conversations with these people?
she's no longer employed with the DDA.
No, I get that, but before that.
But up
Right.
until the 31st.
Right.
Things have been interesting between the DDA staff and the board for a few months. So in the way that your different pillars have run, and the communication on that is that you all were taking control of various aspects, and so it's been kind of a bit of a hot mess. So without knowing
Well, it's
where
been
you all want to
mentioned.
go
Hold
on that.
Hold on, let's, okay, before we get too far into it.
Sure.
We talked about this at last meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And we told Madison to continue with what she's doing. The only thing we asked for clarification on was the permit for outside food vendors.
Sure.
That was, and we.
That's the only open
everything
item I
else
knew of.
was,
She-
Hey,
I mean,
go
and she's
for it. We said you're doing a great job.
been
keep doing what
working
you're
on it.
doing.
Sure.
I mean,
That's
she's-
where we left off as a board for what we still wanted to see before moving forward with the event. So it was there, did that get worked on? Is that there? Was there an updated
So you have the
event
whole,
permit?
you have all the files from what she sent you, I believe, on Wednesday. I believe she sent you, I know Andrea had asked for some things, so,
Mm-hmm.
and that you had sent that folder, so we sent
Right.
that back. I mean, there's a lot of volunteer work that this takes, and a lot of that has just stopped. The event permit is still valid with the village, so that's still there. We did try to, probably November, December, we were working to see if the whole RV, Tin Can Tourists and the Vintage Airstream Club and whatnot, we were trying, those groups were, the Lions Club had met with the village president, and that was a no-go. So pursuing that wasn't, but as far as vintage cars those are all things that could still happen. I don't know how that is going to, at this point, how that happens.
I'm sorry, the Lions met with me and I said no to what now?
Oh, there was something about that, getting overnight permits for like boondocking at the Lions Field for that. They had a conversation, I have it in an email. They had a conversation just as far as event use permits, what's required, because there was talks about
It sounds like they
expanding.
just didn't want to facilitate that.
Yeah, they just said for this year it wouldn't work.
Okay,
Right,
which is fine,
so
but-
I
yeah.
didn't say no to anything. I just wanted to clarify
So I think
what we're talking about here.
So I think the only thing we're discussing right now, as it pertains to Vintage Fest, the only thing that this board wanted to see was an update to the permit, the cost that we would charge for an outside vendor to come in, because that was the sticking point on the last event that had the food vendors. Otherwise, everything that's there as far as the event is concerned, I mean, I would imagine it would continue to operate no different than Winterfest did. It's a DDA event, the information's there, we continue as normal. Just because one person resigns, you don't cancel the whole event or stop dead in your tracks, right?
Right, and you would think that coming up to just 6 weeks before, most of this should be planned. And I think that's what the question is, what you guys are asking is, how is it not?
Yeah, aren't we on target as of when she left on the 31st?
Are we not on target for what?
to have the event. I
No,
mean,
no,
it's-
we're not, because the focus groups where we had all of these things, I mean,
And why is
I
the
guess
the
why
first
wasn't
time
that
that we're
brought up?
hearing this?
Yeah,
The
at the last meeting.
The last meeting, the only thing that this board asked for was to update the event permit.
Okay.
There was
That's it.
no other concern.
there wasn't
brought.
an, to update, the event permit was already up, there was no update to do with it at the
We
village.
never, not with the village, but ours
If
that
we
was
had
going out to
vendors.
vendors, what we were charging, you know.
Oh, I'm
before
sorry.
we were
Yes,
charging
I'm sorry. I
$25
misunderstood.
But
Got
an
it,
hour.
got
it
it.
wasn't brought up at the last meeting that this whole thing has fallen apart.
No, she was on target,
Yeah.
except for the food trucks.
So there's something included in here, food trucks in Traverse City, no food truck, reasoning, Frankfurt. I mean, I didn't click on these links in the digital. What, is this part of?
Related.
But I think
Is
what
this related?
Elizabeth is saying is that the Vintage Fest is not on target to be happening.
I know, but the specific question from last month was regarding the food
Correct.
trucks and how much.
And that was included in the event report.
Yes.
So, right, so is this related to that, what
Yes.
we asked about? Okay,
As far as a permit amount and all of those things, no, I don't have any information for you on
Okay.
that.
So this board, if we're going to, and Andrea, did you read that, the folder, did you come across the event permit? Was that included in the?
I just briefly looked at it. What I was looking for, and it's kind of down here under new business as well, and it's kind of echoing what Elizabeth is saying about the pillar, giving reports. What I was bringing up when I asked you about that event report was, can we have that communication? So it would be like on the shared documents of here's an ongoing, so at any point, anyone can go to those shared documents and see the status of events or projects. It's, when you have it on a shared document and things are like a live document being updated, it keeps everyone always current. So that's really what I was more talking about, was having it as just an open document that anyone could access. And
For
even
the
anything,
whole
like-
event, you
For
mean?
anything.
Yeah.
I mean, even as we start, the pillar projects of the marketing program.
Right.
I would like to see that uploaded as a working document, so anyone can log in and say, oh, this is where the pillar's at with this project or this event. So I guess I'm just a little bit surprised that when we got our update last month, I felt that the update was, we're on target, we just don't have an answer regarding food trucks, but now we're not on target.
That was my understanding, too.
So I guess the question then is for Elizabeth, what's the plan then for Vintage Fest?
I don't know, you all haven't, there's no budget amount that's been approved either. We don't have
Yeah, we had,
well, these are the.
when I had asked, I was told I thought it was
$6,000.
that was budgeted for it. That's what
There's
Madison was working
There's a
off of.
line item in the budget, but I know when this board changed, you all said you want to be approving every event and the dollar amounts when they come. So I'm looking at the minutes from the April meeting, where it talks about the event permit request to send to village council with final vendor approval at the May meeting, but there was no dollar amount approved.
But then how was Madison working on this project if she never had a budget amount?
Were we?
The amounts that have been, money that has been spent so far, the only thing that's been spent on Vintage Fest is a down payment for the main musician. That's the only amount that's been
I
spent.
know, but how was she doing anything without knowing what kind of money she had to work with? Because when I asked her, she said, I have 6,000 for this event.
I'm referring back to the last several months
Well,
that
wouldn't
this,
that have come up by now?
Yeah, I mean, it's a
Yeah,
little
how did
late
that
now to
not
ask
come
for a
up?
budget.
I mean, I think everybody was thinking that Madison is
I mean, well,
working
she
away
told
in
us
earnest on this.
She was working
Yeah.
on it, so I don't know.
I
Right.
would encourage you to read her resignation letter. That might give you a clue, a little
read
bit
it.
more
We all read
detail
it.
That-
on
we-
it.
I- we under-
I
we
mean, I
under-
guess,
we
I don't
under-
know what to tell you guys at this point. I
We under-
really
we
don't.
understand-
I'm in a little bit of a pickle.
We understand the inner workings and the conflict that has been going on. That's not lost on anybody, but there's still a job that has to be done at the end of the day, and we're paying somebody to do the job, and that's what we were told at the last meeting, that it was on track, we were good to go, and now we're being told this month that, well, she's not here, it's not, we're not confident with where it's at, and I mean, that seems to be the reality of it. We're not lined up to have this event because, but I don't think it's because this board didn't approve anything. It never came to the board.
I would think as the director, you would bring it to us and say, Madison can't do anything further because she doesn't think she has a budget for it. I don't think that that's Madison's job to come to the board. That's my opinion. I don't know what
So
you guys
regardless,
think.
it sounds like we have some work that still needs to be done here if we want Vintage Fest to happen.
Did you get a packet? Is that my understanding? You got a packet of stuff that was unfinished by Madison?
What was, Andrea had put together an Excel sheet with kind of just like some guidelines, and Madison compiled all of that. It was in her last week of work. She compiled as much of the information as she could, and I shared that with Andrea.
Okay, so for Vintage Fest, the main stage musicians are complete, so it says here. It says musicians. I don't know if that means multiple or just the one.
Does that mean all of them or just one?
I believe it's one. I'd have to look at that. I haven't had a chance to look at that since I was out of town from
Okay.
Thursday on, so.
And then photo booth is complete. Assuming those are complete.
Those, that is reserved. It has not been paid.
The big thing is the cars, I think, because
Right.
that's gonna take some logistics, that's gonna
Planning.
take some commitments from
Right.
individuals, so I think I would probably start with that. Andrea, I don't know if we can, during this outside vendor policy and procedure, if we can agree upon an amount at that point?
I did some research, because if you think back to April's meeting, that was supposed to be presented to us at May's
Right.
meeting. So I did go ahead and do a little bit of, and yeah, we can talk
So
about
we'll
that for
hold-
sure.
Yeah, we'll hold off on that
Yeah.
until we get down to eating
But I
the
think we need
business.
to know, I mean, who's doing this event?
As I say, hold on, look,
Yeah.
everyone's talking, is it the decision of this board to pick up the loose ends that were not done, and we're going to carry through this in 5 weeks?
I think we owe it to the town to continue and try to pull this off. I mean, this was Madison's baby. She started it last year. It was the first year. She did a great job with it.
We wouldn't be reinventing the wheel.
Right,
It's
exactly.
already been done.
We just have to get the
What are we out for the
information.
deposit of the musician?
No idea.
Elizabeth, do you know that dollar amount?
I can, it's in your, should be in your bills, this month's bills. I don't have it at the top of my head, but I mean, if we take a minute, I can find it, unless somebody finds it before I do.
Do you
I
know his
mean-
name, the person's name?
Was
It
that
is
the one we
a,
couldn't identify what it was for?
Sean McCurry,
yes, I believe that's correct. What's the dollar amount?
$500.
500.
And is that just a deposit, or is that all of it?
That's no, that's definitely not all of it, no, I have the,
So, I mean, if, Elizabeth, if you were to put your focus on this, can we have this event?
Are the volunteers are still meeting on Tuesday?
we now have 2 or 3 volunteers that are showing up.
So in your professional opinion, can you put this event on or not?
No.
So you think it needs to be
Can
canceled?
I put it on my own? No. Not where things are at. I know that there is definitely, there are cars that are interested, but you received the whole, did Zach forward you the whole packet? You did, okay, so there's the day of, everything that happens the day of, that's a lot of work. And one person at 36 hours a week isn't able to complete that with everything else that's
Yeah, it's just, it's
here.
unfortunate that we weren't told that last month, where we could have made some changes. So I think the board now needs to decide, if our executive director thinks this is unable to be done, what's the plan?
Well, I would say this very briefly. I don't think anybody knew that Madison wouldn't necessarily be here.
True.
You know what I mean? So that's, I mean, it's extenuating circumstances. We're down a person who did a lot.
But even a month ago, if we had been told,
Yeah.
well, we think the pillars are working on it, then we could
Or
have.
we
Well, I
only
think
had
we've moved
2
past that part of the
Yeah.
conversation at this
Okay.
point. It's more about the execution
But,
at this point.
and I understand that, but as of May's meeting, if we knew we only had 2 volunteers and we need 20, it would have been, I mean, what are we
Then you
supposed to
can
do now?
take action on it, right.
We would have been
right.
able to take
Well,
action.
it sounds like
back in May.
if you would like to carry it out, it just needs to be a pared-down version.
They both know.
I don't think in May she knew she only had 2 volunteers. I think
Well,
some of this has
each
come
meeting.
about, I think this has come about since, pretty apparent to me, since, you know, her assistant resigned that, and we're acting like we're surprised that there's not volunteers out there. I think we've seen what's gone on the last month and a half. These people have sort of found other things to pitch in on, it sounds like, and it's a
Oh, I
huge
don't
event.
disagree with
It needs
that.
all kinds of volunteers, and if they're not there, they're not there.
Right, but what I'm saying is, had we known that they weren't there, I mean, they didn't just stop as of this Tuesday, correct?
They were at the April meeting,
Yeah.
that room was packed.
I think probably the last, you know, meeting and different things have probably shook them up enough to just say, hey, you know, this isn't, I'm just surprised, there's surprise in this room that there's people not wanting to get involved.
That's not the surprise.
It's
The
just the
surprise is that we
communication.
weren't told
Lack of communication.
that this event is not on target, when in May we were told, we're moving along, here's where we're at.
No, she's telling you she can't pull it off
I'm
by
not-
herself without the volunteers.
That's why I asked the question, but what I'm saying is at May's meeting, someone stood up there and said, we're on target, I've got everything ready to go up until this point. So you would think when that person leaves, you know, wish her the best, but then you would be able to take that packet and keep moving forward. But now to hear, oh no, that's not in place, we didn't even have a budget, is a little surprising.
I don't know about the budget part. You know, I hear what she's saying about, you know, wanting us wanting to sort of look at it line by line, and yeah, there was 6,000 allocated, but the point is, it takes bodies, a lot of bodies.
No
to
one's
They
do
were
this.
there
questioning
in
that.
April.
No one's questioning.
Okay, so I think we're getting in the weeds a little bit on this.
I mean, we've
Do
got
we
6
have-
weeks to
do
put an
we
event
have-
on.
Does this board think realistically, with the manpower we have, with the information that we currently have, and the timeline, can this event take place?
Well, didn't the first Winterfest happen in that short amount of time with only our director?
I would say, I haven't looked at this packet. I don't know what we have, what information we have to go on, or what we have from last year. But as I said at the last meeting, I am here to help and to volunteer. And no one reached out to me for any help or any volunteering. I'm still here to help and volunteer, and I'm happy to do it. I have an awful lot of experience in events and coordinating. It's what I do for a living. I'm happy to pitch in. I'm happy to do it, whatever it takes, whatever we need to do. So short of not knowing what this means, where we're at, I have no idea. So I couldn't tell you if it's a pared down version of what it was last year, if we have 50 cars instead of 200, I don't know.
So can we work on it and kind of get a feeling of it for the next week and see if we feel like we can put it together?
This will literally take at least 1 to 2 meetings a week outside of what everybody does in order to essentially get this done.
Yeah, I think
Are
we
you,
need,
I'm with you, Danielle, I'm willing to help. I mean, myself, along with 4 other volunteers on our tree board, pulled off Arbor Day in a few months. I mean, we can do this.
I would think we put 3 to 4 people on it and look at this for the next 2 weeks, see what information we have, and make a
Right.
decision at that time. If it needs to be canceled, call a special meeting, or I don't even know if we have to even call a meeting if if it's more inaction than action, but I think that a decision needs to be made in the next 2 weeks, and that's gonna require 3 to 4 people meeting multiple times.
At least weekly, yeah.
To review all the information that we do have, the information from last year, and see if it's something that can be
Right.
done. So do we have 4 volunteers that
I'll volunteer.
I'll volunteer.
Yeah.
Danielle,
Sharon.
Andrea?
I'll do what I
So we
can.
got 2
Sharon.
volunteers, okay, so we
Okay.
got,
Betty?
Thank you.
And if we could get our executive director all the daytime hours from there and everything we're doing on the side, and everybody takes a
Yeah,
job.
Be focused on that. Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm
Was
sorry,
there-
myself, Sharon, Andrea,
Betty?
and
Betty.
Betty. Sorry, I didn't see you raise your hand, Betty.
I'm raising it for
Okay, thank you.
And was there a budget requested that we need to approve?
I
I
thought
thought
we
that
already
there was a
allocated
budget
60,
and that
yeah.
it was all set
So
up.
we should be,
Danielle,
the budget is
Can write my
6,000.
name down.
I mean, do we have to re-vote on that if there's no
We're good to go
official?
with, assuming we have 6, Zach,
Yeah.
we can move with that.
Do we still want the northern,
But less what we've already done, yep.
I just asked my friend about the Mopars, and he's going to get the word out and see how many he can get.
do we still want North Main closed for a portion of time, and have we requested that yet?
It already was, that was the event permit that village council approved
So that's
back in
already,
April.
but that
For the
council doesn't.
whole of, that
the-
included North and South Main Street.
Okay, the council doesn't approve that, though, the county does, so is that taken to the
Oh, I'm
next level?
sorry. That still has to go to the other, yes, it still has to be signed off by the police chief, the fire chief.
Okay, I'll follow
and
through
health.
on that part.
Okay, thank you, Megan.
Yeah.
So who's running this then? That's what
Well, I mean, the people that
who's-
just raised their hand
We're
and
gonna
volunteered.
put together a
because-
We're
group
not
to
gonna
see
let
if
one or
it's
two
doable.
Got it,
ruin for
okay.
everybody.
And you all, what's that? I'm sorry?
We're not gonna let one or two people who drop the ball ruin it for the whole village.
Well, I
community.
mean, Marty, I mean,
Do you know-
let's,
I know.
Do you know Dale of the car museum?
Dale Wells.
I
I'll
think,
reach out to
to
him.
answer your question, I think that once we meet over the next 2 weeks and decide if it's doable,
Uh-huh.
then we'll
Okay,
hopefully
so
get
you
a
use all
leader
the
of the
information
group.
that you've gotten from Zach?
And see if we can do
Okay, and are you
this.
expecting me to be part of these meetings? What is your,
Well, we're looking
I
for
would-
I'm
volunteers.
looking to.
Sure. I mean, I would say if your schedule allows it, it
Mm-hmm.
seemed like based on what you were just saying, you didn't think that it was feasible, but now if you have more volunteers and you can be a part of it, absolutely. You know, you have the experience in that, you've pulled events off in shorter timelines before. So your background knowledge is, I think, going to be an asset for
Yeah.
getting this accomplished in a short amount of time, since we're down the main organizer of the event, so.
So what I was going to suggest is make sure I have everybody's emails to you guys, and throw out some dates and times to everyone, including Elizabeth, and see what works for everybody and, quickly.
I'm gonna reach out to the car museum guy. He's a friend of mine.
Okay.
I think he'd probably think that was really fun and wanna be involved, so.
Okay.
Okay, so,
And if I could just have access to these files,
I can forward them over
from
to you.
Megan.
There's like,
or
yeah, one,
Madison.
yeah. Yeah, I'll forward them to you, and then if you want, we just want to share it with the group
Okay.
even, that'd be great.
thank you to the two volunteers.
Yeah, thank you
as
very
well.
much.
Okay, moving on, summer concert series.
That has, all the slots are filled. There are events on social media and on our website. We have most of the invoices, they are payable the day of, is what we've done, how it's been done in the past. So the checks get cut ahead of time and then they get, handed out. They're not done all ahead of time, but they're, done in advance.
Are those contracts on Drive or something? Where is that information?
It's in a folder on Madison's desk because they just came in last Tuesday and Wednesday.
Oh, so it's something that can just be scanned in and put on Drive or something?
It could be, yes. Mhm.
Will you do that?
Yeah, sure, we can put that on there. I guess, it sounds to me like you all want a database that everything is on. I don't have the expertise to do that. The organization that you all are asking for is much different than how our office is set up to do.
Oh, well, maybe you misunderstood. All I'm
so- Mm-hmm.
saying is if you could make a folder on the Drive, that we already have that Drive share, and just make it for Vintage Fest, and then anything that
Just
already
dump it in
exists,
there.
just
This
put
summer's?
it there.
I think what we're trying to avoid is the same situation where one person leaves and an
Sure.
event or whatever their project is that they're working on gets upended and there's no information, and then we're stuck debating, do we cancel an event or do we move forward on it? I think it will just make accessing that information much easier if we have somebody who's,
Plus keeping track of the budget.
sure, somebody comes in and we don't have a contract and they're saying, well, you guys told me you were gonna pay me $1,000 and it's 500, but nobody's got a contract.
Sure.
We're,
Yeah, if we just have a folder for every event or project, then whoever's working on it can just be throwing everything in there.
And it might, I know that can kind of be tedious sometimes too, going through and scanning all these things. So I don't know if maybe you could reach out to Mike Romano to see if he knows of any app or option that would make scanning a little less.
We have a scanner on the little printer that we have.
Yeah,
so
but I'm saying
that's
if
what I'm
there's
using.
12 contracts, how long does it take you to sit there? And
They're one-page contracts, so they're
Okay.
actually,
All right.
it's not that tedious, so.
But
if we're going to create any type of, well, not if, but, posters need to be created for that if they're going to be distributed through downtown. So that needs to get done, and I do not have a design background. And so, if somebody wants to
Is
volunteer to
that something
create
that
that.
Verona does?
Well, don't we
yes,
have-
They do
absolutely.
content
Mhm.
development, or-
Don't we have last year's and we can just
Change the date.
re-put
No,
some
the
dates?
summer concert
Oh.
series is, no, this has not been
I
done
can,
last year.
I can have a poster designed.
Okay.
I got a marketing team that can,
Okay.
quickly, I can have a poster tomorrow.
Yeah,
That would be ready to be
perfect.
printed.
That'd be great.
All right, sounds good. Moving on to new business, we have our annual election of board officers. We have a printout here. Currently, I am our chair in the interim. Our co-chair is vacant because that was Carl Brandt, who's no longer on the board. We have our treasurer, Greg Tarr, secretary, John Rose. I do not have any interest in continuing the position of chair, so I would ask that somebody from the board volunteer or step into that role. I don't know if anybody is interested, but this is the time to elect our officers for the next year.
I would say the same as treasurer. I was treasurer kind of in name only and did it as a courtesy, if you will. I wouldn't have any interest in continuing that.
Okay, so John is currently secretary. He is not spoken one way or the other. Are you interested in continuing that? Are you interested
I
in a
would like
different position?
to, I don't know how to do this, but I would like to make a motion that John be chair.
I'll second.
So if I could,
If-
for
if you're-
simple sake, if you guys agree on, we can write the names in the slots, and then you can
Do
do
it all
one
at
vote.
once. So
Unless
do you
they
want
Okay,
don't
I
rescind
agree.
your
mean, do we do it
motion?
as
Let's
discussion, or do I have to make it a motion?
Well, let's, kind of what Elizabeth just said, if we could discuss
Chair.
each position
Yes.
and make one motion at the end, it'll probably be easier. So I
Sure.
don't know if you want to rescind your motion.
I will rescind my motion.
Unless somebody's fighting for the same spot, then you'll have to do it that way.
So, okay, John, your name has been thrown out there as chair.
As much as I appreciate it, I will decline. I do not have the time which is required for that position, but I appreciate it.
Well, I guess my second choice would be Andrea. Would you be interested?
Zach, you're not interested?
I am not interested.
I will, if you're not interested.
So Andrea,
Would, Daniel, would you have any interest in being co-chair?
I would ask John first.
I thought, oh,
Would you be-
okay, well, I guess I just assumed that you were, wanted to just.
Not to give the impression that I don't want to do anything. I'm just very sensitive to what I feel the time devoted to
Sure.
these positions needs to be and should be, and I can't commit to that. I'm sorry, thank you.
Zach, you don't want co-chair?
no.
Nobody else wants co-chair?
Danielle?
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 Okay.
And
And Greg, you don't want to do treasurer?
No, I can't do it.
Is anybody willing to do treasurer?
Deborah? Or Marty? Or I guess Zach or
John?
I don't have the.
Anybody, really.
Let's just ask
The
John and every
treasurer-
single
the
one.
tre-
Until he
the-
answers
The
yes.
treasurer and the secretary position, just to kind of explain, I guess, a little bit, Greg, I mean, it sounds like the concern is time. Did being treasurer require any additional time on your end as a board
No,
member?
I wouldn't, no. I don't know what the next year will hold. I mean, we had things, squared away,
Mhm.
so so no, it didn't require much time.
And I would ask the same of John as far as the secretary position. I mean, really, in the scope of the description, it calls for taking minutes. However, our executive director has been tasked with taking minutes in the past. Is there much of a time commitment for the secretary position?
Would you be willing to continue being the secretary?
I'm willing to continue in one of the two open spots, that if there are in fact two more open, just so that I can help do something, sure.
Do you have one that you prefer over the other? I mean, you seem like you kind of asked good questions about money in the past.
I'll volunteer to, if you desire to step into, if Greg's stepping down as treasurer, to jump into treasurer just for some variety on my sake.
Switch it up a little
since I was
bit.
already secretary.
Which leaves,
fine.
which leaves us
Secretary.
with secretary. We need, so that leaves us with Marty or Deborah.
Deborah?
Deborah, have you?
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
That's fine.
Meeting attendance is really important in these positions, and I mean, very candidly, I don't know as though you've been here 50% of it at least. I haven't caught exact count, but it.
I've
so
missed 2 meetings since
No.
January.
Well, can we co-chair that, so when you're
it's
not
been
here?
more than that,
No?
too.
No, I mean, somebody can always fill in, but I mean, like I said, it's not, you don't really take minutes because our executive director has been tasked with that, always. It's always been.
There was a few times when I was secretary for, what was it, 6 years or so, that if our director was out sick or something, I did have to take the meeting minutes. There's been closed session times. It's just generally the fill-ins.
Yeah, yep.
I've
Well-
just never done it, but walk me through it. I mean, I'm willing to try it, yes.
So Marty?
I mean, my point is I'd be willing to do it, but you already know that was kind of a point of discussion at the time I was presented to be appointed, is that there will be some meetings that I will have to miss because they're speaking engagements that I sign up for a year ahead of time.
Right.
So there will be some that I miss.
And I think that's fair, that meetings are missed. Greg, you mentioned that attendance is important. And looking back at 2021, 2022, you missed a lot of meetings, other board members missed a lot of meetings,
I
so
didn't, no, be
How
careful
many
with a
meetings
lot of
did Greg
meetings.
miss?
you missed 12 meetings.
Was
in
that, were those during COVID? There's no way I missed 12 meetings.
2021 through 2022. The co-chair missed 4 meetings. All I'm saying is, I don't necessarily think it's a
Where does she get
sticking
those
point.
numbers from?
I don't know, you'd have to ask her, I don't know.
And where do those numbers come from?
The agendas that are posted on our website, our DDA website.
The
We can-
minutes? You
yeah,
mean the minutes?
Thank you.
So
And we can go through them. And my point is, though, Greg, is I don't think that's a sticking point for somebody to volunteer and to be an officer, because I think that we can jump in and we can help each other out. But it feels like it is a sticking point with you because you've mentioned it multiple times. But
It's
it
very
only
important.
seems
No,
to,
it is important.
it only seems to apply now
No,
with this board.
that's
Well,
not,
let's-
that's not the case.
I-
I'll, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, I think attendance is important for everybody, whether you're an
Sure.
officer or not, or not, just to keep up with what's going on and keep
Yep.
up to speed, and we all have lives, things come up.
Yep.
But, it's important that if we are on the board, that we're committed to the board and the time it takes and the requirements, which is why, John, thank you for being honest and, admitting that it's too much of a load, because the chair and the co-chair, in my experience, are the two positions that will require the most time commitment. And if the secretary is not required to be taking the minutes, which they have not been before, if you're not there at a meeting, I don't think it makes a difference from an officer standpoint necessarily, because there's nothing being asked of you or required of you after the fact. I think we should all be doing our best to attend the meetings.
Absolutely.
Well, and I think you know that I have canceled and rebooked flights and paid for flight changes and everything else to make sure that I can make all the meetings that I don't have a commitment to speak.
Sure.
So,
So,
but Marty, I
think,
would.
Deborah, you would be a better fit for that.
You think so?
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like you would be able to attend more often, but I don't know if attendance is more important than.
Well, unless the secretary is tasked with taking the minutes, then attendance would be absolutely necessary, because then you're gonna put somebody else in a position where they're having to take minutes, and that is gonna fall on the co-chair
So
or the chair.
then, might I suggest we go back to John as the secretary? He's been quite consistent and has taken minutes as experience. That would just be my suggestion possibly.
And then what do you do for treasurer then?
Someone has to step into that spot.
And is that more forgiving of time that's missed because no one has to fill that role in the absence? It's more of a check.
I don't know, Greg, what do you think about that?
What sort of time commitment has
It's
it been?
it's not a huge time commitment, but that's been historic, because we've had staff, we've had things going pretty well in the past. Obviously, we're all discussing, it's like there's not, things that are different now. So I can't speak to the future. In the past, it hasn't been a large commitment.
So,
Deborah, I think
I'll-
it's something that
I'll
you can
do-
handle. I mean,
I'll do whatever you guys want me to, so if you want me to be your treasurer, I'd be happy to do that. I would
John,
just
are you
need-
okay with being the secretary?
Oh.
Yes.
all right, so what are we saying?
John moves back, keeps the position at secretary. Deborah, you said you're comfortable being treasurer?
Sure.
Okay, so right now, we have Andrea as the chair, Danielle Lee as co-chair, treasurer McLeod, and secretary Rose. Do I have a motion to approve those officer positions?
Can I say motion as,
Oh, absolutely.
you just said it?
I'm asking
Or do I
for a
have to
motion.
repeat it?
Nope, I'm,
I make a motion to fill those positions as read by Zach.
approve the 2023, 2024 officers as presented.
I have all this written down as well, so.
Okay. All right, do we have a second?
I second.
Second by Hutnick. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
One nay. All right, best of luck to everybody in your new positions.
Thank you.
All right, moving on, we have review and approve resolution of the Village of Romeo DDA for approving expenditure. We have correspondence here with email, as well as the previous resolution that was approved in 2020, and the current 2023 resolution that is being presented. We briefly talked about this. It was mentioned in our budget meetings that we had entered into these agreements with the village in the past. Previously, there were two projects that we partnered with the village on, one being the LED lighting, and the second being the crosswalk project. The LED lighting project didn't really go anywhere. We entered into it with the village. Instead of going through and replacing all of them, we were getting billed in small increments, and we didn't spend a lot of that money on the project. So we ended up spending more on the crosswalk project. The correspondence you see in here via email that we received from the MDA, they were brought in on an email expressing concerns about the resolution itself. I received some correspondence. I just wanted to clarify that it was not anything new that this DDA has not entered into before with the village, but the concern was resonating from the lack of specifics in the resolution. So I don't know if you guys want to take a chance and review this.
So what's different between the resolution that's being presented now and the one from last year?
So the
Well,
previous.
the last one was from 2020, so
Okay,
3 years
sorry,
ago. That's
sorry,
okay.
3 years ago. The last one we signed. I mean, I quickly looked at it, but nothing was
Yeah.
hugely jumping out at me, so I wanted
And-
to understand what the concern was now versus what
And-
was in 2020.
To tag on, since you're gonna be answering questions, is there, I didn't see, is there a dollar amount with it? What are we looking at?
No, so that dollar amount before was, you know, so the previous, resolution, there was a project that was brought to us. We agreed upon this $45,000 amount, but the verbiage, is very similar to what we're receiving now. We did include CBD, $30,000 in CBD revenue sharing in our budget. We talked about that potentially being part of the alley project, that we could go and partner with the village on. It's up to this board to determine what that amount is going to be and how we want this worded to give back to the village and say, this is what we're moving forward with you.
And
Okay,
I
so
could-
this, so just to make sure I'm clear.
Yeah.
The resolution that we signed in 2020 is essentially the same as the one being presented now. We have to clarify the dollar amount and
That was a 2020, yeah.
Okay.
that's it?
Well,
Or- Sorry, I'm just
Well,
not.
and there wasn't one done in the interim as to what you're saying, the crosswalk project was entered
it's
into.
basically a
So there
two-year
was no
project.
need for this document, of which was created by past president Melzon, and even speaks in the minutes that were included here from the DDA approved minutes, that this will be looked at yearly to be updated. So this will be reviewed on an annual basis. So this is where we're at. This one was approved at this year of 2020. This board jumped in on the crosswalk projects, and so here we are this current budget year. On my second day in office, I was requested from the executive director to come up with a memo of understanding for this board on how to move forward in cost sharing and paying certain bills. So through that time, I spoke with our board chair of how this board wanted to go forward. Did you want a memo of understanding, or did you want a cost share, of which is a little less, if we were going to do a memo of understanding, which is perfectly fine, every time our DPW works on whatever is discussed or decided in that memo, we will then have to register those hours, come get an invoice, bill the DDA, who will have to turn around and pay the village, which then now you're paying office hours, you're paying billing hours, you're paying accounting hours, on top of the hours of the manual labor. Whereas if we do this memo of understanding, you give us this money, or the village up front, and this is a line item. Correct, I'm sorry.
Yeah, yeah.
This is the line item that is billed every time the village does work in the DDA district. This, I left it open-ended. Again, Zach threw out that I did not request an amount. The past amount was 45. You guys have talked about 30. I'm not asking for an amount. I'm just asking, again, this is us reviewing this on an annual basis. If this is not the way that this board wants to go forward in conjunction with the village, that's fine.
Were there any hiccups with it operating that way?
There hasn't been to date.
well, I would say, so going back to the first time we entered into this, I see the LED lighting as that we entered into this project and we budgeted 45,000 for it, and the work that we were expecting to get done didn't get done because instead of going through and replacing everything, the village chose to replace those bulbs as they burnt out. So it really went, the plan was to replace all the bulbs, and that didn't happen because, I don't know, they just didn't budget for it. So we kind of gave them this blanket not to exceed amount, but it had to be for that specific line item. My question would be, what did we spend on those expenses last year? Do we know that amount that was spent on DPW that the DDA was billed for?
No, I don't have that at my fingertips, and I wasn't asked to compile any
Sure.
of that,
Do
so
you
I
know-
apologize.
Was it a lot? I mean,
It was probably, I would guess it's under $5,000.
Okay.
The difference between, so when Megan, when she and I met the end of November, it wasn't about doing an MOU for a cost-sharing project. An MOU between DDAs and municipalities is typically to cover employee expenses, DPW, if there's things that needed to be done, with other agreed-upon services. So it's a contract between the municipality and the
Correct.
DDA. So not specific to the
Right,
cost
but this
sharing.
covers, this also does cover the same thing.
But it doesn't say
There's
it
two
in
ways
the-
of doing the
in-
same thing.
But in the resolution, it's a blanket. So if you look at the emails, my concern, of course, is the TIF funding has to be used very specifically. And so that's why Dana is strongly urging against just doing that, because you do run the risk of somebody really looking at this and going, wait a minute, you aren't using the TIF money properly. You can't just write a blank check for, you don't know what it's going to be used for.
That's always been my concern, always, and I think.
Really?
this
Even
is-
though you voted for it, that's your concern?
No, how the TIF money's used.
Oh, gotcha.
That's been, yeah, Megan, it has been. Okay, I pay a lot into it every year, a lot of building owners do. And we've already got problems with, trash collection and where that money's gonna come from and the other problems we're facing right now. I think as a new board gets formed here, the new positions, we have this Dana, who I've met never, she's been available to us. She seems like she's putting out pretty good advice there. I don't know what the rush is to commit a bunch of money to the village versus keeping it under the DDA's control. And I'm not an expert, and I first to admit that, but why? I think the light thing always kind of it was very beginning of my time on the board, as I recall. It's very confusing to me why we would.
Yeah, well, I can't speak to that. I wasn't the president that controlled that at that time, so I can't speak to how that was
It doesn't
done
matter.
with that
I'm talking about keeping
president.
the TIF money, not on maintenance and up, things like that. I'm talking about, as we've all, you've talked about grants and doing all these things, structural things in the village. You want all these changes that some of the new board members talk about. This is the time now, not to get wrapped into now maybe some maintenance items and things like that, so.
I
But
can-
we did
I can tell this
budget
board-
for $30,000 of revenue sharing, correct?
Yeah, for
Well-
the central business district.
I can tell this board budgeted for the next coming 23-24 budget year. The village has DDA-related expense items at about $83,000. So that is where revenue sharing would come. I can come and ask every time. So similar to last month with the trees and that request, that would have just came and been billed partially to that line item. Or we can come every time and request if that's what the board would prefer.
Well, I think that's maybe part of the problem, because I think something like the tree trimming, such a large amount of money being spent on the trimming in the village. Is it needed? Probably, but at that time, it was just being used to fill a day. It wasn't, nobody designated that ahead of time, nobody identified that area as a spot that needed tree trimming. It was just, hey, these guys are out here, they need to fill a day, let's put them here, and it would have cost the DDA $8,000 that we never got to take a look at on the board. I mean, we're really set on being very mindful how we're spending this money and what we're spending it on. Doing this does take away some of the control, yeah, of the funds that the DDA has. How we alleviate that is by being more specific with that. I think we need to know, if there's $80,000 in expenses, what exactly is that going towards?
Well, some of it is road maintenance, snow plowing, cold patching, let's see, shoveling, salting. When you think of the man hours that are billed, there's also, under the man hours, you have all of the pensions, the insurance, on top of all of that is billed out. You have the garbage that is picked up every day in the downtown, well, I shouldn't say every day. The garbage that's picked up, and then there is that has to go somewhere. So there is a garbage corral, or not a corral, but dumpster at the DPW that the downtown garbage goes into, and that costs money also. There's the banners. I have, since taking office, I haven't had the office bill this board for changing out banners and the hours because we don't have this situated yet, and I wasn't going to have a bill sent to this board of which we have no understanding of. So so we've been paying for that.
May I ask a question? Is this like one document versus the other? One is a percentage of all money spent and the other is specific project by project? Is that the idea?
Correct, and that we would bill for everything. Every time these hours are spent in the DDA district, we would send a bill.
Is it safer for us to keep track of making sure that the TIF money is applied toward TIF eligible expenditures if we can look at each individual project and say this is within the DDA district, but this, like, an easy example. If there's tree trimming inside the DDA district, but there's also some outside of it, if we share in that cost, do we know that we're not overspending and stepping outside of what we're allowed to spend the money on?
That's a great question. I really don't know the answer to that.
Well, Dana addressed that before. I mean, in the master plan, you have to use the TIF money specifically how it's laid out in the tables that
That's
both
not what
boards
she's
approve.
That's not my
That's not what
question.
she's asking.
Oh, okay.
She's asking.
Well,
if
so
we-
like, for example, the tree trimming can't be, TIF money can't be spent on tree trimming because maintenance is not in the TIF plan, the current TIF plan, per Dana. And Dana said she'd be willing to come and do a workshop and meet with you all to help you understand this a little bit more if that's, she's just very concerned, obviously, because this affects downtown development authorities across the state. Michigan's one of the only states that has an MDA, or a downtown association.
So.
Right, she cautioned us against setting the precedent of entering into this resolution based on the information she received, but like I pointed out, the precedent has already been set. It's not something new that this board is doing. I want to make that very clear, that this is not the first time it's coming across to us.
Right, and
It's
if
just
this-
how this board wants to allocate the funds, and if we decide as a board that this resolution should be specifically noted as, we want to see this go into alley improvements as a joint project with the village,
Or parking lot, that'd be
or
great.
parking lot maintenance, I mean, there's,
We have striping coming up, that will cost money, that the parking lots are gonna be done. Parking lot, we just got the mulch done, that would have been a great cost share. There's
No different
there
than the
are-
crosswalks, I
There,
mean-
yes, there are projects ongoing. And if this board would like to take time, because there is no rush, if this board would like to take the time to look into this further, go ahead. You have set aside that money in your budget.
Right.
And
We
I
were
don't-
just trying to tie up the loose ends of making things so that going forward, there's an understanding going forward into this budget year of how things are going to be budgeted.
and
I
I've
have a-
always,
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Andrea.
I just have a question. So, looking at the one from 2020, TIF money cannot be used for maintenance projects, is that correct?
That's what we have been told by the MDA.
So, and I understand that, but here it says for installing and maintaining and administering improvements.
And
How
she
is it
specifically said
different?
this should not have ever been written like that.
Got it, okay,
Right, so
that's-
just because it was done in the past, it wasn't done in the past correctly.
She's not suggesting
So
we do it
moving
forward.
forward, right, you wouldn't.
Okay, that's, I understand.
Yeah.
That's what I was trying to get clarification.
It's been wrong a lot.
Well, I think what the history, well, we won't get into the history of it, but I've always seen this as an opportunity for the DDA to take on a project that is not within its own means to do so. The crosswalks could never have been done if it was solely a DDA project. Granted, the village came to us with that project, but there's nothing to say we can't go to the village with a project.
I
And
love that.
that's, that's where I see the benefit of this. But we need to be prepared that if we do opt to go that route, we are going to get billed for a lot of these services that we may have not gotten billed for in the past.
If we go with a specific project, you're saying, Zach?
Yeah, right, and correct me if I'm wrong, Megan, this is kind of, if we said $10,000 as part of this resolution to help fund expenses that are incurred in the CBD, then
That's
we
not-
wouldn't be getting billed line item by line item for trash removal or projects like that, or not projects, but just ongoing work like that that the DPW does, banners and.
Yes and no, it depends on how you want to set it out.
If we did a specific project though, and we said we want to partner, and we, like, this one was for the lights, then we said we want to do parking lots and help with that, we're going to do the $10,000. That $10,000 would go to the parking lots.
That's where it's designated
Yeah,
too,
what
that's
it's
how that
designated.
works, yeah.
Okay.
This wasn't designated towards the lights, though. If you
Okay.
read this language, there's other things that this
Got it.
Yeah, it
included.
doesn't
Okay.
specifically.
The crosswalk of which the money was given, that specifically went, you can see it in all of the budgets and billings.
Got it.
That it went straight into that. This document was not done at that time.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, we just need to be clear of how we are moving forward, working together between the village
Got it.
and the hours that the DPW does, and what is expected on your end and our end.
Would it be possible for the next meeting to have what those non-project expenses would look like?
The things that we've been billed for in the last calendar year or fiscal
That'd
year, or
probably be
which
an
amount?
example, Yeah.
Yeah, the things we've been billed for. So if
Sure,
we-
what's the time period you're looking for?
Well, I guess if this would be annual, I would say annual. So
The last fiscal year?
Yeah, yeah, so we would be able to say, we, banners cost this much, we've changed them out this many times a year, so we can get some sort of an idea of what we could commit to this, and then we could always do projects on a
Sure.
one-off basis, just to give us a number
So,
to look at.
yeah, that's a good point, and we can do that for sure. The benefit of doing, you can have a memorandum of understanding and a resolution. An MOU is specifically to say, and I have this quote from DPW, for example, to change out 4 banners a year, here's what the cost is. To do this, here's what the cost is. We get charged $1,500 to be a part of the audit every fall. So that would also be included in an MOU. We have the example, I've shown the former parking committee, an MOU of Lake Orion that they have with their, and this is, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. In fact, Plant Moran has done MOUs with other municipalities. It specifically says what's included, so you don't have all the little nickel and dime things, which was
Right.
what Megan's referring to, but then you keep your projects separate, because this references a project fund. In our budget, we don't have a project fund. We have a revenue sharing line item. So, I mean, the language is off,
Sure.
right? I mean, that you wouldn't have the director sign this. This would be signed by the board chair, which in the future, it would be, obviously, it would be Andrea signing that. So, I think you'd be safe with not threatening your TIF money, or the concern with that, I should say, instead of the word threat, when it's for very specific projects that each one of you has said is important for the Downtown Development Authority. Then you can earmark that money specifically for that, and it's not used at the village's discretion, and that way you're honoring your appointment to this board, based on the MDA's recommendations.
So we look at it next month?
Yeah, if we can get those figures for next month, then we'd have a,
You could try to do that, but I will tell you, in addition to losing a staff member and you guys wanting to still do, this is a lot for you to ask one employee to pull all of this stuff.
Well,
I'm
is
just
that- I
letting you
mean,
know.
Didn't say that it
So,
wasn't
I
a
mean, it's not
rush,
a,
right? You said it wasn't a rush, so at this
No,
point, we
but
don't
going
have to-
forward, we have no understanding of,
so we're gonna start getting billed.
yep, if, we need to have an understanding, because we can, going into our next budget year, we need to, am I billing for
So-
Can we-
banner changes and all of the, yeah.
Can we save Elizabeth some time and Elizabeth, can you just email the treasurer at the village office and just ask for a breakdown of all bills received for the last fiscal year? I mean,
Yeah,
that should.
I think it should be a
should
priority.
be-
Between the DDA and oh,
Yeah,
that
whatever-
part's not hard, but as far as you redoing a resolution or maybe
Well, no,
coming up
that's
with an
what I think-
MOU by next month, if that's what you.
Oh, no, no,
no.
no.
Okay,
I was
good,
just
okay.
asking about
Oh, I can
What
totally
is
do it.
numbers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I can
Yeah.
get what Andrea is
Just
referring to,
Yeah.
for sure.
Okay, so we're gonna table this until next month when we have a little more information. Okay, next up under new business, grant writer per request of Andrea St. Lawrence.
So, yeah, I wanted to, we've talked a lot about grants and funding, and we've got a lot of lofty goals. So I wanted to, with approval of the board, for the employee committee to at least assemble and start discussing what it might look like for us to do or bring on grant writing in some capacity. I've done some research where it's by the grant we can hire, we can contract. You know, there's a different ways. Sometimes they're paid, you know, an hourly rate. Sometimes they're paid a percentage of the grant they're going after. But I at least wanted to start looking at if that is a feasible option for us. So I was hoping that we would be able to have the employee committee meet, kind of just look at what that looks like and bring it back to the board, if it's something we'd like to do going forward.
So I think possibly before we get to that point, I mean, I believe Kathy Dickens with the Fork County Commission, they had actually, not necessarily offered it up, but they were originally looking for satellite offices when we first took the space with PDCU, and they talked about specific, I mean, Kathy, that's what she does. She goes out and finds money, and they, if I remember correctly, they do it as a percentage of.
What the grant would be.
Yes, so you're not paying for anything up front. They are, I think I would reach out to her. She's already
And Zach,
familiar.
if I may, they're actually doing a training course currently through them on how to write grants.
Oh, okay.
So they've,
And I'm sorry, where is she, who is she with?
The Fork County.
Oh, Fork County, okay.
Yeah.
And why
I mean,
were
it's
they
not any
looking at our
official.
space?
Oh, I mean, they were just, they were aware of the space that we just took on, and there was an interest in having a relationship with the DDA, and, you know, they have satellite offices in other counties.
I see.
And
So-
that,
I'm sorry, do you think then that would be maybe be something that would be like, office space in lieu of, and,
100%.
okay, cool.
100%. If that's something that, I don't know where they left off or if they're currently still seeking that space, but she is a wealth of information, and it would, before you
Yeah.
take the time to do the subcommittee, I would think start there and
Perfect.
see if she can maybe provide some insight.
Okay, great, I'll start with that.
Okay, event report. Andrea?
So again, we've kind of talked about this a bit today, is I would like to see some sort of a structure where we have the shared documents or shared
Bye, Greg.
file.
Have a good week.
And we can have, keeping everyone on the same page. So even just something like this, you know, as I have a meeting, or have a conversation, I can kind of upload, here's what we went over at our conversation, our minutes can be there, but I think it's gonna help, because I think a lot of our meetings, or a lot of our board meetings are spent rehashing and questioning, and if we have one place where everyone can go and see what's going on, regardless of who's working on the project, it would just help to keep us focused and moving forward, instead of always looking in the past and saying, what was said, or what did we agree to?
And you're saying that in our Google Drive that we have access to right now?
Yeah, well, we have the shared Google Drive, so if we could just have, you know, a folder for, you know, even each pillar has a folder, or if there is a
That's what I
special
was thinking, at a
event.
high level.
And we
start
should
at
be
the
able to
pillars.
create those, right?
Yeah,
Okay, that's
Be able
easy.
to what?
We can create those,
Oh,
because
yeah.
we have the email access, so we
yeah.
could create
So
it.
we can
and
create it, and then we just kind of dump everything in there, so.
We don't have to create more work or whatever, we're already
No.
doing
And I
it.
mean, I'm not saying go back in time, like, but from here,
Right.
going forward, let's at least start that process.
I like that.
Not load 5 years of stuff, but just,
I would just caution you to be careful with that, because if if you upload this stuff and you haven't had board discussion at the board table, because these are public funds, if everyone's looking at this information and then conversations are happening, you are in danger of violating the Open Meetings Act. And
So if we
because
put,
it's
like,
so.
minutes?
I'm not saying, but if you just upload things that have not been board directed or board decided on, and you're just all these ideas, and then someone, like Frank chimes in, I'm not gonna use anybody's name that's here, right? Frank chimes in and goes, oh, that's a great idea, and then Susie says, well, that's a great idea, but it's not happening at an open meeting.
Sure. Yeah, then we're in
It's
violation.
dangerous. What you're suggesting, and from my perspective, it's a slippery, it could be
But
a
if-
slippery slope.
If we're uploading agendas and minutes,
Agendas and minutes, totally.
yeah, we're good to
Yes,
go.
but not like, hey, I have this idea.
no, it has
Right.
to be something that's
Got it.
been established and happened. So at
Sure.
least then we can go in and look and see what's going
But
on.
agendas are also posted on the website too.
Yeah,
So,
yep.
yeah.
But sometimes it's hard to dig, you know what I'm saying? Like, if we
Sure.
have one place to go.
Yep.
So that was just kind of my thought there, because with the events, it's difficult to kind of track everything. All right, that was it.
Yeah, I'd love to see the first folder be the Vintage Fest,
Mm-hmm.
and everything we know is in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, next up, outside vendor policy and procedure. Andrea?
Okay, so again, I did some research on this, and I just looked at other cities of what they have, and I just kind of made some bullet points of things that I think were, potentially things we would want to put in a policy. So I think for sure we got to talk about pricing, but also things like cancellation fees, that should be listed there as well, early departure fees. I do a lot of different shows and trade shows, and a lot of times you leave before the end of the show and you're getting fined for it. So we don't have, I know there was one, at one event, there was a food truck and, wasn't going well for them, so they left early. There should be something that keeps them there, because if we're advertising it, we want people to come and have it.
Right.
So I think some cancellation policies need to be put in. Definitely, we need to look at price. Some of the other things that I know downtown does is they're required to have their own trash and trash removal. Obviously, the city's providing a location for that, but they have to have so many size garbage container. There's certain restrictions with how many feet from a door they can be of someone who sells a similar product, so that's something else we may want to look at. But I think we need to have a working policy or procedure so that we're able to move forward without having to second guess every time we have an event and have to come back and discuss it. So that's what I've come up
So a
with.
guiding document and then an actual, contract for the vendor, and they've
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
answered these other questions, like,
Yeah,
you
I just signed
understand
up-
that you can't leave early, you understand that,
Yeah, I just signed up for a trade show and I had to write 2 checks.
Yeah.
One for my trade show and one for if I left early. And if I don't leave early, I get my check back.
Right.
And they come around at, 5:00 and it's like, oh, you're gone, and they
Oh, yeah.
cash your check on
Very
you.
strict.
So, I just think if we have that, we've got an SOP and we can move forward.
Yep.
So we have one, but it sounds like it needs to be revised, for sure.
Yeah.
There was one that was approved by the board, but the one that, it should be in that,
There
the
is
Vintage
one,
Fest one.
but
But I
yeah,
know
we-
there's things that definitely need to be changed on,
Yeah,
for
it
sure.
needs to speak to, I think, cancellation, length
Of
of
course.
stay. I know one of the issues was garbage. How are they gonna handle their garbage? And I think also we need to talk about location. So I can't remember what city it was here, but there is a city that has so many feet from a doorway of someone that sells something. So that's something else we may wanna look at, is when we're placing them, that we're not encroaching.
I would really like to have like a deposit for cleaning up after them, and then
Mm-hmm.
they get it back if somebody walks up and signs off on them, because
Yep.
there are certain spots in town that gather people, which is great, but then
Mm-hmm.
they dump their junk on the ground and walk away, and then the vendor pulls out and they're like, well, it's not my junk.
Yeah.
It
and
was
then
the
they're
person visiting
gone.
my
Yeah.
station or whatever, so it's not fair for that to fall back on the stores.
No, or the DDA, because we're gonna get
We're gonna get
for
billed.
it. So we want to be careful about that.
Andrea, are you seeing this as something that one of the pillars would look at, kind of adding some language or suggesting some language that the board can approve?
I would say, yeah, if the organization committee, I think would be the best one, if they're willing to take it on,
Okay.
of creating and coming back in next month's meeting and presenting something that we can adopt. From what I found, 175 to 650. Now, 650 was downtown Detroit. I don't think we're gonna get that for a food vendor out
No.
here. But we've gotta land on a number as well.
But as the permit goes now, you have to, the way that was discussed at length in the end of January is that the vendor permit that's current with the village, it still has to be paid. It's $150 each. So are you saying that, so however you decide that, whatever you're gonna do with Vintage Fest, I mean, if people are gonna start signing up for this stuff, you're gonna have to do this quick, so I don't know how you're gonna,
And it may not
Do
happen.
that.
I don't think it's probably, we'd be very tough to have it happen by Vintage Fest.
So you're thinking probably no food vendors then?
How,
for-
I don't see how we can, I think we're gonna be really tough to get a food vendor to sign up for an event in July with 5-6 weeks' notice. I mean, people are booking these for
we have a whole
graduations
list.
and events and,
Yeah.
and if we don't have a policy, I mean, we were hoping to have the policy in May to approve. We don't
But we have a policy. You could take the same policy and just increase the amount.
Well, there's other issues though, location,
Yeah.
that sort of thing.
It
But
would-
we could, as far as, it doesn't necessarily have to be, specifically written in this, but if this board makes a decision that, as far as location goes for this Vintage Fest, because we won't really have time to do all that, we could say, these are the locations that we're gonna put these food trucks in. Yes, we're gonna get down to the nitty gritty and we're gonna have a contract
future
that
date.
speaks to that, but we know, and we're going to put that in place, that we're gonna put food trucks here and here. We're only going to have 3, we're only going to have 4, whatever it is. I agree, getting food trucks in this short amount of time can be tough, but there are a lot out there, and there are a lot that we could probably get. I'm not opposed to doing that, and I know Madison in her files has a whole list.
Yeah.
And I thought she said she had already talked to some of them, so that may be in this file.
Right.
That we can work off of. But I'm not sure how we are allowed to move forward as a board if we have to vote on something or not to be able to do this for Vintage Fest.
Well, let me ask you this, Danielle. Do you guys have, you said you do events and you've done
Yep.
kind, I'm assuming your contracts have a lot of that built into it, what Andrea's asking for.
Yes and no, only from the standpoint, no, as far as location, because we're on 50 acres, and so it's right here, that's
Yeah.
it. We don't
Right.
have the logistics of other businesses. That piece of it would not be in there, but yes, there is a lot in there as far as cancellation, fees for that. Pick up your trash, if you have a generator, it has to be on, this or that, so.
I'm wondering if I caution myself in saying this, but, part of me thinks if the board can if the board can decide on a dollar amount
Yeah.
right now
Yeah,
and trust that in these 2 weeks that we talked about, getting the details together for a permit to go out, and then we adopt it as the official permit, this could just be the event permit that covers the Vintage Fest so that we can make sure we get the vendors in that are interested in coming, agree on a dollar amount so that that does not get lost in the event, and then use that as the jumping off point to adopt one moving forward that will fix that problem that you mentioned with having to come back and relook at everything. I'm just thinking of a way to get this done.
Yeah.
So that we can pull it off as part of the event, because I think, there were, how many food trucks were there the first year for Vintage Fest? 3? maybe?
4.
4?
No, keep in mind, everybody says trucks. Some of them were just vendors.
Right.
So they're not all the big old trucks
Sure.
pulling through, right? Some of them are just like little carts, like the hot dog guy,
Sure.
Food vendors.
So
food
vendors,
vendors,
yeah.
right.
So I mean, you said how much the dollar amounts range from 175 to
650.
650?
I mean, now 650 was downtown Detroit, so
They-
that's a different,
I
totally
would,
different
per
animal.
I would say that a reasonable number, based on what we do and what this is gonna be anywhere between 2 or 250.
So
And that would
Is that enough
cover-
money to cover
Yes,
DPW
that-
cleaning up
well,
after and stuff?
I don't know about that, but that covers the $150 permit, and then
So
whatever.
that would be, you're saying that's
Yes.
included in that. So $150, we were previously charging 25. So if we were at 250 for the permit, knowing that 150 of that was gonna go to the village, that leaves us with $100 per truck. Is that an amount that we're comfortable with, or does that still not seem like, the $150 is standard? That's what the village requires just for coming into town.
Right.
Is that extra $100 enough of a buy-in?
Doesn't sound like a lot to me.
To get the benefits that the taxpayers are paying by promoting the event and hiring the people to take care of it, and I think it does add to the event. We get people coming out who are specifically following these trucks or want to come out for that reason alone. So there would bring potentially more traffic into town as a result, but we really need to look at that $100 and say, are they paying into it? Is it enough? Or do we
Right.
treat them more like an outside vendor of a face painter? You're paying a face painter to come into town, but they're not taking away from anybody. They
Right.
add to the event.
Right.
It's a toss-up, you know, it
Right.
can't be so much to where we're pricing ourselves out of the market.
Yeah.
Um,
That's the issue. Some of the smaller food trucks that would be willing to come to a smaller town and do that are not gonna pay a huge fee. They just don't, they
Yeah.
don't have, they're not gonna make that much.
Do
They're
we
just
have
not.
any history or is there anything
Well, I mean, one of
easy to
them-
find on how much they make in a day?
Well, they're not gonna tell you the truth.
But I mean, I wonder if
They're not
there's-
gonna tell you the
if there's
truth.
stats
They'll,
on that.
well, yes and no. They're gonna be a little bit flighty with that, with what that number is. But, you know, I mean, one of them left, to your point, Andrea, because it just wasn't working out, so they pulled out.
Yeah, it was a high end.
Right,
I mean,
exactly.
their meals were quite expensive, so
Right,
yeah,
it-
that was one of the reasons
100%,
why.
100%. But we have some, like Rustic Bluebird, they have a food truck. I didn't talk to Dina, didn't talk to Courtney, but if that price was, you know, the starting figure for this first year where we're really kind of trying to flush this out, you know, it's their town, is their, you know.
They've got a
they've-
built-in base.
They've been here, so is that something that they're gonna do? You know, I don't know.
Well, I don't want to stir up too much, but, I mean, Marty, you've been vocal about this in the past, and, you know, John's more of a coffee shop, you're a true restaurant. What are your thoughts on that?
Pricing?
Yeah, I
I
mean-
can tell you that the Pit Stop, they charge $1,500 for the week, for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
So they're
The truck
charging
that you're
500
sitting
a
there,
day?
it's $500 a day.
I've had a handful of people tell me that we're way,
$1,500.
way
We are way
underpriced.
underpriced.
Yeah. So,
I think definitely a lot more than $100.
I agree, and I think though, where we may have some trouble with this event is if we're not able to, I think if someone's gonna pay that kind of money, which I agree with you 100%, then we almost have to guarantee the flow of people for them to sell to.
That's part of the issue too, is that some of them will even back out before the event even starts
Well, if it
because
rains,
it's gonna rain, it's gonna be bad
Yeah.
weather, I'm just not gonna show up, and so I lose my $300 or my $500, I mean, whatever. So it's
You're-
definitely something that you
You're
can happen.
not gonna nail a number.
No.
Right now, you have to just kind of pick one, and I think what you're faced with here is, first of all, the time frame that we have to work with to get this specific event up, yet still want to attract some vendors. It won't be the right number necessarily, but I just think it needs to be a reasonable number that maybe we all agree is maybe a little
Well,
bit too low, but at least we've got some incentive there
I like
to get some people.
I guess I'm just curious if the Pit Stop is doing that pretty much every single weekend, and it's very reliable for them, and they're paying $500, and I think we should try that, and if in a couple of days we have no vendors who are interested, then we know it's too high. But if we go in low then you don't know if you could have gotten more money out of it. I mean, you'll know in a couple of days.
I think we have to pick, but we have to pick a number now,
Well,
right?
I think
I
we-
mean, I can't change
But
that
if
number
they're
in a
paying-
week because
Right.
we won't be meeting.
I think we need to know for, like, is that actually, do you guys see any of that information? Do we know that that is exactly what they're paying, and does
Oh,
that
yeah,
include
he
the
told
hundred
me,
and fifty?
the owner told me. We were-
Right,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, does that include the 150, are they getting a permit for every day?
Other than your $150 permit is a 3-month permit. And that, they come to the village, they see the clerk, they fill it out, there's a transaction, and that's as far as we are involved.
So does the individual food truck get the permit, or is the gas station getting the permit?
Well, knowing,
The food truck gets it for that specific location. If that food truck wanted to move to a different location, now it's specific to that allowance by that property owner.
So if we're talking 4 food trucks coming in on a weekly basis, because they rotate,
Each of those food trucks that come into that property have to have a permit.
okay.
So you're getting $150.
There's been an instance where one came in that there was only one food truck specifically that had a permit out at the time, and a different one was there, and there had to be conversations.
So for the sake of time and where we're at with this event, I would throw the number 300 out there and see what that attracts for this event. We're going from, we gotta remember
it
too,
beats 25.
we're going from 25, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if we're,
Well, and to your question, Andrea, that will cover cleanup for the DPW, you can always contract your own cleanup. I mean, the Lions, for instance, on their property, when they have an event, they contract with a cleanup crew. So
I
that
just
can be
don't know
something,
what reference amount to assume for cleanup. Do you have any idea?
well, and that's what we need to get in the understanding of.
Yeah.
I have a question
What the
too.
DPW hours are and how everything costs, I mean.
well, it's no different than the porta potties out there in our parking lot. I'm up there all day long cleaning up hand towels, paper towels. So it's.
Can we quickly ask an audience member of any insight? Is that fair?
yeah, it's not,
Don't we- Don't we have any records from last year's Vintage Fest that we could
Yeah, I mean, if you all
reference?
want any thoughts, I mean, I'd be
Like,
happy to.
did we pay for cleaning last year, or was that on? a
I just
different-
have a question.
They
the
came on
permits,
Monday,
too.
as they usually do on Mondays.
DPW?
Mhm.
And then you got a bill?
No, that's just, it's been part of what has
Part of our
been taking,
services.
it's just, they've just been taking care of that as
Okay,
part of
so we won't have any
cleanup.
records
I mean,
for
there's a
that.
lot of municipalities that they have in-kind, exchanges that they do porta johns because it's a service for the whole community. They come out and enjoy it. So, I mean, but as far as the permits, I mean, I think your $300 number is a good to have a few. But again, this committee is going to have to decide how many they're going after, where they're going. I mean, it's the permit with the village, the event permit with the village that will go before the county is from, it's for all of downtown. It's from the Masonic, I always forget the name of the streets, the Masonic Lodge down to Old World Nouveau, that whole, with obviously 32 Mile being open.
Sure.
So there's a lot of spaces for them to be. If you have a ton of people with vintage cars and people are walking around, they're going to expect to be able to walk around with some food. So, so the fact that you all are open to this, I think, is a good thing.
So quick question on clarification, just to make sure I understand for Vintage Fest. The current permit that we have, that's an event permit with the village, allows us to have food trucks. But each food truck still needs to go to the village and get a specific permit that's the $150. Is that accurate or no?
Your event permit doesn't, I don't want to say has nothing to do with it, but the village has a vendor permit.
Right.
Whether it's coming to an event or it's coming for the 3 months or no
Right.
matter what, that food truck needs to have a permit.
Okay. So then my question is, if we, as a board, and this is just logistics, but if we are charging them $300, knowing that $150 is going to this event permit, we, as a board, cannot come get this event permit, correct?
No, the truck
The
has to
the
get
truck
their own.
has to, they have to come get it.
You could pay the fee for them. They
Okay.
could come get the permit and it
Great.
could be paid through you.
You could have you could have your event, your vendor permit form that is in this file that Andrea has, right? And then in that packet, they could have a vendor packet that
Yeah.
also includes the paperwork they have to fill out to the
Got it.
village. They pay
Okay.
one fee, and then the DDA could pay one check.
Lump
Like, say
sum.
there's 5 vendors, right? 5 times
Perfect.
150.
Yep.
I would imagine that would be kosher. Would that
Okay.
would that be
I just wanted to make
appropriate?
sure that was, we knew those pieces before.
And again, because the clerk is permits.
Right.
Clarify it all with the clerk.
Yes.
That is her area. She
Yes.
very much keeps everything in order and has tabs
it.
on that.
Perfect.
I don't know, I think we should still charge the 300 on our end and let them get their own permit.
Well,
I kind of do too.
I mean,
I-
$300 for the day is really good.
I have a question, though. So the permit has to be per vendor? Because if they're good for 3 months, would it be, maybe not for this event, but moving forward, can we purchase 3 vendor permits, since they're good for 3 months, and issue them to our vendors? And it would save us from having to do,
But she said it has to be per location. I mean, we'd have to
Per
talk to, or per truck, per location. So you couldn't say,
Right.
DDA has a location at Pit Stop, and I can put whatever one I want there
Right.
and for each during the
Right.
3 months.
For
Now,
one
if you
thing, they have
had
private property, and then they have to
multiple events in
produce
those 3 months
their
and you had
own
that same truck
license.
there, that
Yeah.
covers all of
And
it.
then we're just creating more work for us by saying, hey, we'll get the license for you, this is how much it's gonna be. Why put more on our plate? They
No,
need
I
to do
agree.
that, because they have their own information that they have to
But
provide.
we have to define where they're going to be. So
Right.
part of this packet that goes to them, if it's Rustic Bluebird, we have to tell them where they're going to be, because that permit is specific for that location, that day, or that, well, it'll be 3 months, but, so we have to tell them.
The other thing to consider is you need to be going to the doors of the current restaurants, asking them, could there be some sort of special for that day that can be advertised? Is there going to be some sort of special that could be a grab and go that they maybe normally don't have on hand? Or I know in the past, Marty, years ago, I want to say it was Harvest Day, you did a grab and go lunch where you got a hot dog, a bag of chips, and a can of pop, and it was like $5, and you had your table out there kind of thing. We can have those sorts of things also.
Well, and Elizabeth has done that in the past. I mean,
Yeah.
reaching out to the
Yeah,
restaurants.
every single
and-
event, we've done that.
And but the one thing to think about with this one day versus the Friday, Saturday, Sunday that somebody set up, they're coming out, they're buying food for one event, rain or shine. It's not like a restaurant where you can withstand the elements. You go and you sit down at the restaurant and you're out. These people have nowhere else to go to eat. So if it's a rain out, there's probably not going to be that many people at the event, and they're still paying this
$300
the
or whatever.
$300.
Yeah.
So I would caution going higher than that for that reason. That's just my opinion.
Okay, so I'm just going to speak to the elephant in the room and be brief and kind. There's some repair that needs to be done in the food truck community. So if you go too high, there's probably going to be a concern, well, you might just cancel it on us again at the last minute. So by doing something at a lower end, you're saying, hey, we really want you here. We're not going to charge as much as maybe it might be next year or some other, I mean, those don't have to be the conversation. But if you go too high this soon after,
Yeah.
past circumstance, I think this looks like a good olive branch if you go on a slightly lower level, because it sounds like you're only looking for maybe a handful.
And let's not forget,
So-
time is not on our side right now. So this can always be looked at again, once we see the results of this, how it worked out, get feedback from the food trucks. And maybe knowing that there's more events coming up, you have something that says, okay, there's an annual commitment that is discounted. Maybe $300 is the discounted rate, and it's $500 if you're
Yep.
doing event by event.
Well, and it
We
makes
can
a
figure it
difference whether
out.
it's, a one-day event, a two-day event,
Right.
whatever. I mean, that's all part of it.
One question. Can I ask, Sam, what would you be willing to pay for a one-day event to come out?
I don't think you want cheap. I think at $25, people are just, you're getting a low budget.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You willing to come out?
$500 minimum for a food truck, and then you should also put, you're not getting a snow cone or a hot dog cart at $500, so they should be like $200 or $250 if you're a cart or a tent. But a truck, minimum $500.
Yes.
Because otherwise you're getting low budget people, you don't want low budget
So,
people.
so different categories is
That's
kind
a
of what
I
I was
agree.
doing
Way to
as
look
far
at
And
it.
then
as
just
who
say,
we're
hey, we got a
talking about.
minimum, we're gonna take 6 of them, and just go to the top people and say, there's only 6 spots left. who's gonna fight for them.
Yeah.
It's an investment. If it rains,
So
I mean,
based on,
It's
That's
just
life.
happens.
Yeah.
I mean,
so
they
ba-
do it every day, they work every day, it's not like they just come to one
Yeah.
event and then park it.
based
Yeah.
on the information I hear from Elizabeth, as far as work to be done, based on, I think what we agreed, we're gonna work hard the next couple weeks to see what we even can do as far as the event total, based on the input I just heard.
I mean, it may be brand new
I say we just
vendors,
need to
yeah.
get this, this group that's gonna be working on Vintage Fest, taking all of this into account, get to work, and if we need to actually vote on funds specifically, we've got to throw a special meeting together if it's needed. We're talking about doing a 6-week, in the next 6 weeks, putting this
Can we-
event together.
Can we
can't
pick a
decide.
number and vote on it
I can't-
tonight, so that
well,
we have a way
can't
to
pick
move
number. If we're
forward?
gonna, if the committee decides they want to do a tier structure like that, then we have to pick all of
This
those
late in the
tiers like
game, a
that.
tier structure is complicated. I mean,
I would
I
just- yeah, I think
go
we
on
should
for
pick
a
a
number
number.
and be done with it, or you guys are tasking yourselves with a lot of
For
extra
this-
steps.
For this one event, and then move on, and then
Then
we
see
change
how it
the next
goes. I
time.
mean, if it,
Is anybody available that was jumping in to help and volunteer for the Tuesday morning at 10 meeting tomorrow?
I can't.
I cannot,
No?
I have a dentist.
Anybody?
Sorry.
This might be a
Little
good,
bit too soon.
I'm just saying, if it's already scheduled, we can start.
I mean, I can virtually be there.
I have a dentist appointment.
Oh.
so I'd be like-
Well, I say we,
I don't
if
know
that's
if
something that's already scheduled, we
I know.
utilize that time frame already. So
I
then let's
appreciate
plan
that.
for the following week then, at Tuesday at
I-
10?
I mean, I'd be happy to join tomorrow by phone also, if that's okay.
I mean,
Because I'll be on the road driving for hours and hours and hours, so, I mean, no problem.
I could do 10:30.
It's,
So Deborah, are you part of this now too?
No, I'm saying if they would like me to.
Okay, be careful with
to help,
quorums. You,
because-
you can't have a quorum, just so you know.
On the phone?
Period,
Period.
period.
Our
Oh,
committee has to be 4 or
Virtual.
less.
Oh, okay, well, I thought you were short, I'm sorry. I thought you were a short person, so. if
well, we
you're
can
not,
hand
then
you
I'll-
off jobs. We can give
Yeah.
you duties.
We can delegate.
Yes.
No,
Yeah, I can
just a thought,
virtually do it.
Since it was already happening tomorrow, that we could jump into it, but then I say if we can plan for the next Tuesday so that there's something
Yeah.
going. Do you want to wait that long before you meet first time?
No, I wouldn't like to. Let me send out a quick email with some dates and times. Yeah.
I'm going to throw out in order for the committee to work on, I think specifically food vendors that we're talking about here, a number of $300 for a permit, and let's see what, if any, we get. And
300 and they get their own permit, right?
I'm saying 300 total, so actually the permit would, if it costs 150, then the DDA would be left with the 150.
I would agree with that, considering the time.
For this event, to learn how it works and who's willing, and everything can change the next.
So
I
I
don't-
could do language real quick if you wanted me to tell you that, to make it simple.
I don't know, do we need an actual motion?
I just want to,
Yes.
my only concern with doing that, and I agree with you, but when we go back to these vendors and say, okay, what you paid 300 is now 500, are we going to get pushback at some point?
We do that all the time. I mean,
Well,
as
not
our
every
events
event.
grow,
You're gonna
the
get quality.
price goes up.
Okay.
Yeah,
Right.
I
To
think
the-
300 and they get their own
For-
license, because they have to have their own information that we don't have access to for that permit.
But we can include that permit in their packet. So they still fill out the permit, Marty, and we turn it in. They fill out all of their information and we turn it in. It's just simplifies the process as far as they're writing one check.
Should we be considering what it costs you to put food out in front of your restaurant? Because you,
$100, that's like,
how much does that cost you?
yeah, especially with the cost of food and everything, if,
Well, I
disagree
mean
with that.
permits wise, I thought you had to have you have to have an inspection because it's
Oh,
not
yeah.
normally a place of service. So what does it
when I
cost
went
you?
from my sidewalk to another sidewalk,
Mm-hmm.
it was $150 for one day.
Okay, well, each day.
One day, $150 over the summer.
Okay.
So
And that was through the health department. because you have to go through them and get a special permit.
Marty, what's the number that you would like to see? Is it $500 and then $150 is part of that and it goes to the permit? Would you be comfortable with that?
I mean,
or-
let's say you threw out $500 and you only got 2 people who responded. If you talk to some other DDA districts, they say, never have more than 1 food vendor
Yeah.
competing with your restaurants per 3,000 people. So maybe that's okay.
I
Maybe
mean,
that's all we
do
need
you
is one or
want
two.
quality or do you want buffet food? You know what I'm saying? It's perfect. I mean, if you wanna spend $100 for a truck, you're gonna get $100 worth of garbage, I'm sorry.
Right, so is $500 a number that you're comfortable with, and that includes their permit fee of $150?
With it being the first year, I think at least 400, which includes it, and then
Okay.
we can increase it next year.
Okay.
You know, entice them a little bit. What are your thoughts? You know, you get
I
what you
agree.
pay for.
I mean, I'm okay with trying that. I
Yeah,
don't,
and I don't
Let's
think
just
we
try it.
need 6, 7 trucks.
No, no,
I think if we had 1 or 2, I think
And I
that's
think-
enough for
do
what
you-
we're doing.
Did you guys last year have any vendors that are like vintage jewelry?
Yes, we
vintage
did.
Whatever? I
Yes,
mean,
we did.
Are we trying to do that again this year?
I mean, we can,
Is that part of the same kind of
it's part
idea?
of, yeah.
So some are food and some are other things?
Any vendor, it'll just be
Okay.
like an overall vendor, yes. And once we are able to talk about it more, to your, point, we can then start saying, let's have some tiers. If it's a food vendor with a big truck, $500. If it's someone who's setting up, and I
Yep.
made necklaces, then maybe
Yeah.
500 seems a little ridiculous for that. So
Sure,
we can look at tiering it out going forward.
but
Okay,
for
is
now,
somebody- is somebody
400?
Is somebody making a motion?
I have a suggested verbiage that I've written down to make it simple, if that's okay. I can see
Sure.
if anybody agrees to it. Motion to amend the current vendor policy to raise permit fee from 25 to 400 per vendor.
I'm fine with that. I'll make a motion for that.
I'll second.
Specifically for this.
Vintage
next
Fest.
Yes, for
Fest.
Vintage Fest.
Well, correct, because then you guys are talking about changing it for the future, right, so.
So-
Do we need to say that in the motion, though?
And that is
You
to-
shouldn't have to,
do we-
because you'll be changing the
we'll be
policy
changing it
later.
anyways.
Do we
Okay.
have to include in there that it includes the permit?
No,
If-
she can change that language in the policy itself.
Once we get to the
add that.
policy. But for right now, this gets us through Vintage Fest.
So we have a motion by McLeod, second by St. Lawrence.
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries.
You need a minute?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay, moving on, board member comments. Andrea?
I just wanted to thank the board for trusting me with the chair position. I'll do my very best. I'll do my best for the DDA board. I'll do my best for the village council, who were kind enough to put me on the board, and for the residents, so thank you very much. Elizabeth, I look forward to working with you to make sure that, the vision of the DDA is moving forward. And then also, I did write something down for comments that I had prepared. Romeo and Juliet Garden Club Tour, July 15th. Tickets are available at Main Street, Town Hall, both Grubner and Kezar Libraries. So really beautiful homes this year for the garden tour, so buy your tickets and make sure you go.
Sounds great.
As far as, I thought you were backing away so I wouldn't hit you. So I would love to work side by side with you or at another position just to keep it, just to see how you do things. That was my uncertainty of, secretary, treasurer. And also on June 23rd, from 2 to 5, we will be doing a filming at the restaurant.
Yep.
America's Favorite Restaurants will be out, so please come.
What was the time again, Renee?
2 to 5
2 to 5 on the 23rd of June.
on the 23rd, yes, it's a Friday. So we want to come, come fill the restaurants,
Absolutely.
so, thank you.
Cool. That's awesome.
John?
Just one comment regarding Madison. I just wanted to, I know she's not here right now tonight, but hopefully she gets word anyways. Thanking her very much for all the work she's done. The year and a half, as far as being around.
Yes, since the beginning of.
Approximately a
yep.
year and a half. So, appreciate everything that she did do for us. Gonna be missed, and all the best. Thanks.
I would like to thank you guys for participating and for volunteering in some cases, and even just volunteering information. Appreciate that.
Megan?
I also would like to thank Madison for her time and dedication to this board and the fresh ideas that she brought to it that have brought us to this point to even be working on this project. And best of luck to her. And I wanted to give heartfelt thanks to you, Zach. I think we could all agree that you have you stepped back into chair for the second time, and you've done it flawlessly with confidence and brought us this far. And we thank you for that.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Yes, that was going to be part of what I echoed. Thank you, Zach. Anytime that I had any questions about anything, you were always open to have conversations and listen to me and let me talk, and I really appreciated your leadership. I hope that I can slightly fill a little bit of yours, Carl's, shoes in this co-chair position. So thank you for that. Also wanted to thank Madison. I think she did a phenomenal job. Her ideas with marketing and the brochures and the flyers and all of that, and her energy will certainly be missed. So thank you, Madison.
All right, I'll just keep this brief, but this will be my last meeting. I will officially be resigning from the board, so I enjoyed my time here. I've enjoyed getting to know everybody over the years, and it's been a great opportunity. We've had our ups and downs, but we've always made it through, so I look forward to seeing what this board continues to do, and I wish you all the best of luck, and thank you for letting me serve the Village of Romeo.
Thank you.
So
Thank
just
you.
a
On
point
that
of
note-
clarity.
Yeah.
So the new board positions start July 1st, right, of the new fiscal year?
The
Correct.
board for the next meeting.
But, right, no, I mean, like, it's for the fiscal year is the start of when the chair positions change.
What are you doing to me?
No, I mean, there shouldn't be anything before then, but I mean, that's what,
Okay.
I'm just for clarity, because
All right.
for record
I mean,
keeping.
but if so you're going to stay chair until July 1st?
This will be my last meeting,
Got
yes.
it.
Okay.
So,
Right.
on that note, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Call it.
I'll make the motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
I second.
Second by Hutnick, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting's adjourned.